how did transitioning out of the military look for you and kind of, entering, that new world after, only knowing the military for 20 years?
Yeah, it's tough because even if you do recognize it in yourself that you're not prioritizing your family, that is what you're doing, and it's not it's not you being a bad husband or a bad father or whatever. It's very much a matter of fact that if I don't prioritize what it is I'm doing in the military, I'm not coming home.
You're listening to the Art and War podcast with your hosts, Mitch and Nathan. Mitch is a former airborne infantry squad leader who now spends most of his time coaching soccer. Nathan is a professional illustrator and an avid shooter with a couple of years of Canadian military experience. Together, they run the Seaburn art page. Enjoy the show.
Hey everybody, today we got Fred. He works at Spiritus. He's a former Air Force nerd doing all types of stuff and things.
Mm-hmm. Basically a pilot.
That's what everybody thinks. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're in the Air Force. Yeah. You fly fucking fighter
jets." What do you fly?
Yeah. So what did you do in the Air Force? Kind of give that backstory where you started out, why you joined, what you were doing.
So I just knew, it's in my blood. I was just going to join the military since I was like 6 years old. There's other things that kind of came in and out. Like I used to be a big time artist, and I was looking to do that. I actually got an internship to Blizzard Entertainment way back in the 90s.
The video game?
You guys know who? Yeah, I don't know if you guys know who they are. Yeah, back when Warcraft and Starcraft were a thing, they offered me an internship to do like character sketches and stuff like that. I didn't get to go. We were in Germany at the time. But anyways, yeah, so always out in the woods, always doing stupid shit like digging foxholes and stuff in fighting positions. Got in a lot of trouble, but just really liked that lifestyle, man. I grew up on Where Eagles Dare and, The Dirty Dozen. And then eventually, God forgive me, the Navy SEALs, that movie. Man, I fucking love that stuff. It was so awesome. And I felt like that inner desire inside me just wanted to do this stuff. And so with that, though, like high school really sucked for me because I knew what I wanted to do. And I had a lot of people around me that just like, man, what am I going to do? And I when I was like 16, I was ready to just go enlist and get out, but my parents are really adamant about, finishing school and all that shit. So probably a good thing. But then the time came, I was finishing my senior year and I had to figure out what I wanted to do. I had a Ranger recruiter in my fucking house. My dad was like, let's hold on a second. And my dad at the time was a 06. He was a vice wing commander. And he brought over one of his good friends who was a combat controller. And, that was it. At the time, combat control was the only unit out there that was required for you to be airborne, Halo, and scuba qualified. That was the only unit out there that you had to do those before you even get into the unit. And I was like, yeah, that's what I want. Like, I want those things. I don't want to wait until I'm 30 to finally go to free fall school or whatever. So, like, yep, that's it. I'm doing that. So yeah, and then since then, I was like, this is going to be it. I came in guaranteed in 2000 for combat control. I really had no fucking idea what I was getting into. None. Everyone thinks they're ready. They do all these silly exercises and calisthenics, and mentally you think you're good to go. No, I had no idea what I was getting into, especially the water. I was a mediocre floater. That was about it. And so the pool really kicked my ass. So it was a real eye opener. I had to learn pretty quick how to overcome that shit. But yeah, I came in guaranteed. I was actually finished the pipeline, got my beret, and then that's about a year, 8 months to a year. You go to air traffic control school, you go to survival school, airborne school, and then you go to combat control school and you get your beret. And then you go to Florida for another year to get all your upgrade training. So now you're getting your free fall, your dive, and then all of your specialty skills when it comes to combat control and close air support and air traffic control stuff, etc. When I was going, the first thing you do is you do pre-scuba because that's the ass kicker of it all. Like the water is the equalizer. And I was starting to have problems that I never knew I had before. there was a combination of doing these extensive workouts and then putting yourself in a position where you can't breathe anymore. And something occurred with my heart that it didn't like it. And essentially what it felt like is that it was knocking my heart out of rhythm. And it was just kind of like not beating, but just kind of fluttering. And so I had a really, really hard time in the pool. Obviously, guys were terrified that I was going to die or some shit in the pool. And then, big no-no in the community and shut down the place. But finally, thank God, somebody figured it out. It was this legit, straight up Chinese doctor in Texas. He was an Air Force colonel, barely spoke English, but he knew exactly what it was. And so I got an operation done, catheter ablation, where they stick these cameras and prods into your main arteries, one in your neck and one in your leg. Went to my heart, pumped me full of adrenaline, and I'm awake for this whole thing. Pumped me full of adrenaline, and they start zapping these certain nerves to recreate what's going on. And they finally hit it, and they're like, "Is that it?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's it." Killed that nerve, and that was it. Never had an incident again. I came back. I went back through pre-scuba for the third time, and had zero issues. Never experienced that thing again. So that set me back a year. So I didn't finish that school until 2003. So I came in 2000, finished pipeline in 2001, finally finished the advanced skills training in 2003, and then got to my unit in 2004.
So you said your dad was an 06. So, and you were in Germany. Were you at what's that base out there? Hohenfels or
Stuttgart.
Stuttgart.
Yeah.
Stuttgart. So your father being in the Air Force in an 06, that's like a no bullshit position. You're pretty high up there if you're there. That influenced you. Did that influence like your decision, or was it more, I want to do this anyway. I want to be a part of the military culture regardless?
Oh no, it absolutely influenced it. Like I idolized my dad. He was, to this day, he is single-handedly probably one of the greatest human beings on the planet. Like one of the most honest, one of the nicest dudes on the planet. And I just idolize that dude. He's a Vietnam vet. He has been involved in, the black world for a total of 40 years. 30 of them in the military. Very cloak and dagger stuff, flying in and out of East Germany, flying in and out of Laos and Cambodia. So he had been involved in a lot of things, and man, that just intrigued me, and this is at a time we didn't have emails or cell phones and stuff. So he would deploy and be gone. And just knew that, he's on this secret mission somewhere. And then months later he would come back and it's over, and he wouldn't talk about it, but maybe you see it in the news or whatever. And, that always intrigued me, along with all the, the movies I'm talking about where all these guys are doing things in the background. And like, man, that's fucking cool. I was never into, straight up like infantry line charges and stuff. I was very much into the guys that went in to targets and just made people disappear. You know what I mean? Like not slit throats and stuff, but just pulled that guy out and just left everyone else like, what the fuck just happened? Like that was exciting to me. But on top of that, like I said in the beginning, like it's in my blood. My family's been in the military ever since the Revolutionary War. We actually have my great whatever grandfather's pay stub thing from when he was in an all German battalion under Washington. We have his name written on there, Christopher, and he was a private. But yeah, since then, we have all these records of guys fighting out in Pennsylvania against the Indians under Washington, and that's how we got land out there. Because at the time, if you fought with Washington against the Iroquois nation, they gave you like 100 acres or something. And then my family slowly just kept moving further west until they got into Indiana. But that's always been in there. Ancestors in Korea, Vietnam, First World War, Second World War. So it's just in there. Probably safe to say that I can't hold it in. I can't deny my what I am's. So
yeah, it's your lineage, and your lineage is very important, and it's important to a lot of people. myself, my great grandparents came over during the Armenian genocide.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and before that, I mean, we don't know anything about them. My grandparents have passed down stories to me about what their grandparents were like in Armenia, but that lineage is very important. And my grandfather was with his brother-in-law, so my grandmother's brother. They're at a football game and they saw that Pearl Harbor happened, and they were one of the hundreds or thousands of people that just left whatever they were doing, went and enlisted.
Yep.
And having that lineage is a huge factor for why I joined what I did. My grandfather was an infantryman. I decided I want to be a step up from that, and I went airborne infantry, and now I talk shit to him a lot. And
Literally stepped up.
Yeah, literally stepped up.
So did they come over together, or did they meet over here?
So my great grandparents fled the country. A lot of what would they be? They'd be my great aunts, like my grandparents' brothers and sisters. They were the only two in their family. So like they were the only ones within their family that made it out. The rest were like, if you were a woman, you were hogtied, raped, and then thrown in a river to drown. And if you were a man, you were, even a boy, you were like decapitated, or you were crucified, or they marched you out into the desert and you just starved to death. It was a lot of like making statement stuff. Like, yeah, like if you're a boy, you're going to get fucking decapitated. Like, go fuck yourself. We'll do it in front of the village type deal when that whole thing happened. But yeah, they joined the military together. My grandfather ended up being a driver for General Patton after he got wounded. Yeah, he's in the Fort Knox Museum. Actually, my grandfather is. There's a picture of him.
Was he the driver when Patton was killed?
No.
Because that would be interesting.
No,
that would be something to learn from.
Yes. No, but he was not that person. He got injured by a German potato smasher, and this was back in the day. It's fucking World War II. It's not like, oh, you're injured, let's call a medevac and get you out. It was, hey, you're injured? All right, well,
you're not as injured as this guy.
Like, you can get back there, you got to crawl there a mile, I guess you're fine. He still got shrapnel on his leg, but he ended up then being reassigned to a tank driver. And he said he fucking hated it, and he purposely crashed a tank because back then, like, the person would stand on your shoulders and they'd tap your shoulder on the right if they wanted you to turn right, tap you on the left, they wanted you to turn left. Yeah. And it was an NCO, so of course he's a dickhead. He would kick my grandfather in the back of the head. So my grandfather was like, fuck this, and crashed a fucking tank. And then General Patton came and visited and was doing something. And my grandfather just started talking to him, which is fucking bold.
Yeah,
and, and he became like his driver and kind of like personal assistant, where he just drove around doing favors. Everybody knew who he was. If he rolled up by himself, like, people were like, oh, that's General Patton's dude. Like, just let him do whatever the fuck he wants. So
no big deal.
Yeah, so he would always flex with that. Still in his old age, he's still alive, still kicking, still gardening. Awesome man. But having that lineage definitely affected me when I enlisted, and I'm, hearing how it affected yours, I can 100% relate to it. What age did you decide to enlist?
Officially, probably when I was a freshman in high school. I always knew that I wanted to go, do stuff military wise. But when I finally, after maybe an artist or maybe a veterinarian or whatever, and then finally freshman year, I was like, no, this is it. This is what I want to do. And that's why I had struggled in high school, because I felt like this was all worthless to me. Like, I don't need it. I know what I want to do, kind of thing. Which is unfortunate. It's supposed to be some good years there, but.
Did you have to get your parents' permission? Like, because when I did it, I had to have them sign, because I enlisted at 17, and they're like, yeah, you can go do whatever you want, I guess.
No, because I signed when I was 18.
Okay.
Because I'm a December baby, so I was the older kid in my grade, and I had my my 19th birthday at basic training, so it wasn't necessary.
So you knew at a very young age. And at what age did Blizzard approach you?
It must have been in 96 or 97. So my freshman or sophomore year, one of those two.
That's the year I was born. So Blizzard, the company Blizzard now that makes all these badass video games, I was making badass video games back then, was like, and this was just visual art or digital art? What kind of?
No, it was very much visual then. The digital stuff, they went hard to the paint on that, later on, but I had no experience in that stuff. I had whatever the art app is on your computer, your PC or whatever. That's the kind of stuff I was doing. Yeah, paint. There you go. No, it was all character sketch stuff, and then you would build the concepts, draw the concepts, and sometimes they would use that stuff for like some of their like books and stuff like that. But they would take that and then give it to a digital draw fella, and he would put that together and make it professional.
Hey, do you guys like war belts? Well, let me tell you about a super high military grade Army spec war belt from one of our most near and dear sponsors, Advanced Warfighter Solutions. Not only are they super high military grade in quality, they are also civilian grade in quality and actually really fucking cool belts. I highly recommend that you get one. I've been using mine for years, even long before AWS has been a sponsor of this podcast. So if you use code ARTandWar10, you can save some, I think it's $10 off of AWS SMU warfighting belt. We don't get any kickback from that. You just save money, and they're an awesome company that also contributed to Nathan's iPad fund because he needed a new iPad. So good for them. They're really cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, AWS.
Hey, this is Mitchell with Seaburn Art. Did you know that we have a Patreon? We do have a Patreon, and there's a ton of cool things there. Super cool things, and Nathan's going to tell you about them.
Hey guys, Nathan here from the Art and War podcast, here to tell you about Patreon. There's a 24-hour Korean massage parlor several blocks from my house, and I go there for happy endings. It gets pretty expensive, and I need you to donate me money so I can continue to serve my dark addiction.
Not only can you help Nathan get hand jobs from Koreans, you can also help us continue to improve the quality of content that we do. You get merch now after a couple months of being a Patreon subscriber, which is cool. We also have stickers, and we also have high-res downloadable targets that you can download, send to Staples, and get weird looks when you print them out to bring them to your range and shoot. Also, all of our guides are downloadable, high res, so if you want to print them out and make a cool little book, you can go for that too.
You can find our Patreon via the link in this episode's description or in the Seaburn Art page's bio on Instagram. Now let's get back to the show.
So you were making like big decisions for your life at a very, very young age. And I know, you're in high school, you kind of get away with a lot of shit and you can make dumb decisions. And I look back and cringe on a lot of shit that I did, as I'm sure millions and millions of people do. But for you, you had big decisions. I mean, joining the military is a big decision, but it's an easy decision when you don't have anything else going on. You had other shit. Like, you could have worked for Blizzard, and you could have came out of that at a very young age. And I mean, imagine you did 20 years there and where you would have been now you did 20, 30 years doing something else and you were very successful at it. And I imagine you feel very fulfilled from it. But those are big, impactful decisions that determine the course of your life that you were making at a young age that not too many people do. It's either like, college, maybe, military, maybe, or maybe you just do nothing. But you had options. Sure,
but you're an idiot when you're that age. You don't know that it's a big decision. You're just like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll do it. And still to this day, like, decisions don't really bother me. I don't dwell on them very much, and I very much didn't dwell on them then either. Just, I don't know if it's a positive aspect or a positive view on life or whatever it is. I'm just like, fuck it, whatever, it'll be fine. I'll work it out. Same today. Like, my wife hates it. She hates that I don't worry about anything. Like, well, there's no rockets and mortars within reach here, so we're good.
I think that's one of the intangible skills that people that can have success in the military have, where it's very like decision making. Like, you can do it, but when there's nothing really to stress about, you don't stress about little things. Like, you got your bills paid, people are healthy, nobody's dying, like, cool. Anything else is gravy, and there's no need to be stressed about other things. It drives my wife up the fucking wall too.
Yeah. Yeah, and for sure, the worst decision that you can make is no decision. So make a fucking decision. As long as it's, a lot of not illegal or immoral or going to get someone hurt, you're good to go. You can recover from it.
Mm. That's still so, because not a lot of people have options at that age. My option was I could go to college and be fucking miserable. I knew I didn't like school.
Yeah, same.
The only other option I had was sports. I was really good at football and soccer, enough to get a scholarship to places, and I had some. I got hurt. I tore my quad, and
Jesus.
I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, well, fuck, that's not happening. I tore my quad at actually a camp in where was it? Was it Vermont? I think it was Vermont. I was like 16 years old. I was going into my senior year. I tore my quad, and sports at that age, you tear your quad in high school, that's going to follow you through all your recruiting process. Injury prone, maybe that quad isn't as weak. He doesn't come back as strong. Any little thing happens. So I'm like, yeah, that's fucking it right there. And I knew right then. And then I'm like, well, what do I want to do? And then I started to think about my grandfather, and it really kind of just hit me. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm enlisting. I'm going to go.
Yeah.
Didn't
very
turn
much
into
a legitimate excuse. Fuck it.
Yeah, fuck it. I mean, when you're that young, like you said, you're kind of a fucking idiot, and you don't think about like these things in depth. It's like, fuck it. Yeah, I'll go.
No.
Yeah, I'll go join the military, whatever. I'll go be an airborne infantry
Consequences don't exist. I very much remember, oh man, what's that fucking band? Where the one of the lyrics was, you're under 16, you won't do any time. And like that was a very much big attitude back then. Offspring, that's what it was, the Offspring. Like that was the attitude back then. It was like a lot of grunge kids and all that shit. They didn't give a fuck about the consequences because you were under 16. And whether you believe that or not, man, that attitude, just kind of everyone adapted that attitude. And they're like, whatever, I don't give a shit. When am I going to go to the principal's office? Oh no. So yeah, those weren't necessarily big decisions to us. It was just, fuck it. Do it. And plus I just had the desire to do it. I too had a soccer scholarship as well, so I had that option too. It was to a very minor college up north. I want to say it was Vermont, I can't remember, but so I had that option. But I don't know, at that time I had played soccer since I was 4 years old.
How did you have a scholarship?
What's that? How did I have it?
Yeah, for soccer, if you haven't played since you were 4.
No, I had been playing since I was 4 years old.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yep. So I was on the Olympic development program team and all that shit, and very fun. Did a lot of local leagues there in Germany as well. I loved it. It was fun. But I just had this thing inside of me that wanted to do something. Maybe at the time that was more selfish. That was like, I want to be remembered. And then as you realize that's what you want to do, it turns into something like, I want to just do something fucking good. And playing soccer to me at the time, it wasn't going to cut that. I don't know. Maybe, probably looking too deep into it. But I very much loved soccer, very much loved art. And now I can't deal with both of them. It just bothers me. I still do some drawings. Like I draw stuff for my wife and here and there, but it's very much a time thing now. Like I feel like time is running out, and I just can't waste it, if you will, on these little side projects. I got bigger things to deal with.
Yeah, when and I think that goes back to that kind of mindset of when you're young. It's like I have all the time in the world, and then exactly. I find the older that you get, the faster time seems to go. I'm still, relatively young. I'm in my mid-20s, and I still feel like I'm like, holy shit! Like, it feels like a couple weeks ago I was enlisting. I was 17.
Oh yeah,
and it was my hamstring. It wasn't my quad. I just remembered that too. It was my fucking hamstring, not my quad. But the older you get, the faster time goes, and you start to really realize that you want to spend your time doing things that make you feel fulfilled, whether that's for, a greater purpose, whether that's just for your family, whether it's a selfish endeavor. You want to do something that makes you feel fulfilled. When you look back on how many years you said you did, 25?
Yeah, 20 years and it was something like 5 months or something like that.
20 years. When you look back on your 20 years, I think back to the 8, I'm going on 8 now, that I've had. There's moments that I remember and there's moments where I feel fulfilled, but there's just a lot of like white noise I don't remember. Is it similar kind of at 20 where it's like you just have these moments that you really feel strongly about, or do you look at your service as a whole, or how do you reflect on that?
It's probably as a whole, all put together. A lot of it's because of TBIs. You can't really remember too many things, but there's never really, unless you've actually personally like saved an individual's life. I think that would be a good example. But you typically just look at the whole thing as a whole, because one specific operation or a specific training mission or a specific humanitarian thing, it's very fast. And it's just like you said, things go very quickly. Like there were moments or there were specific times during deployments that we were doing operations every fucking night. And there's no way you can remember that shit.
It's a blur.
Yeah, you come back and you do your debrief, you do your shooter statements if you take shots, and then you literally just brain dump it. Unless there was a lesson learned that was key to the operation. You just brain dump it and you go into your rhythm. You go work out, you go eat, you go to sleep, because you got to get ready for the next one. So I think at the time you looked at it as like dwelling on the past, and so you need to be ready for the future. When in fact it's just too much information to take in. You just gotta, move that penguin off your iceberg and get ready for the next penguin to get on.
Yeah, in the moment it is very fast, it's rapid, and looking back, it's very fast and rapid, but I feel like in the moment it's kind of, at least for me in some experiences when I'm out doing like a really long training rotation or like 5 months in Estonia, right?
Yeah.
Like it seemed like it took forever when you're there, or like it's taking forever. But when you're looking back on it, I'm like, dude, 5 months in Estonia, what did I do? And like, I can only remember really specific fucking events that happened, whether it was like a really good time where we went out and we went to the capital on like New Year's and the whole city hosted us. They were really thankful. We got a bunch of great, it was awesome. Like there's specific moments I remember, but for the most part, like if you ask me like day to day, what were you doing there? I'm like, well, I don't fucking know. Like even in Afghanistan, same thing. When you're just constantly doing different shit, it's like, I couldn't fucking tell you what my day to day was.
But yeah, so here's the, I don't know if you call it an analogy, but here's the setup that I usually get into when folks ask if like, do you miss it? Like, sure, yes, I miss it, but you actually only miss like 10% of it, because that's the memorable shit. You only remember the 10% where you're like on TDY hanging with the bros, 10% when you're deployed and in action. The other 90% is heinous, mundane bullshit that you just can't, online training shit that you had to get done, or having to go filter through the armory to make sure everyone's gun's in place, or setting up training events. And it's just fucking shit that you hate. But then you get this like, man, I miss it. And like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You miss that TDY. You miss that deployment. That's it. The rest of it, if they could just like call me on the phone and like, hey, we need you to go do this mission. It'll take a week. And I'm like, man, that'd be a badass job. But they don't. They have control of you, and they fucking, they attach a phone with a beeper on all the times, and you're always on alert, and you're always doing this dumb, mundane shit. No, man, I don't miss that shit one bit.
Yeah, my mom used to ask me, so like, what do you do like during the day? Because like I was an airborne infantry dude. And when you hear that, it's like, oh, so you like shoot guns. You're always out doing,
You're bayoneting people and shit, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, Mom, honestly, I couldn't tell you what I did today. I can just tell you that I felt really busy all day and I don't know what I got done. Like I couldn't tell you. I felt like I was rushed and I was super fucking busy. I don't know what I accomplished. Did some paperwork, maybe. Built up, a counseling packet for a soldier, I guess. For some reason, we had to move all of these things from one Connex to this other Connex. Like, I don't know. Like, there's so many random fucking little things that you don't think about when you're enlisting. And, they don't tell you about that shit. It's like, you're going to go be combat controller. Well, what's that fucking sound like you're going to be doing? That's what you're going to be doing. And then little do you know, like you said, there's like 10% where you're actually doing that. And then the rest is whatever the fuck random task somebody decides to come up with that day.
You could easily just go to sleep and wake up when the next action happens and you accomplish the same amount of shit.
Yeah. And it makes me laugh because there's days where, throughout everybody's career where you just kind of like take a day, you sham out. You're like, I got a dental appointment at fucking 10. So there's no point in me coming in at 9:30 formation. That's going to go up until lunch. And then I have something after lunch. And then you just take the day and the world doesn't fucking end. But if you were there, the world would be ending unless these tasks get done. And you realize you're like, none of this shit really fucking matters. Like, I don't need to print out an LES every week to make sure that everybody's pay is good every single week. Like, that's something that you can do like once a month. You look at it. Okay, I'm good to go. They took my leave. They didn't take my leave. Even better. My pay is fine. But there's just so much random monotonous bullshit that just, I'm not going to miss. No,
not at all. That was one good thing that my later unit was really good at, because we were operationally busy a lot. Gone 290 to 300 days out of the year, whether it's the deployments themselves in conjunction with TDYs and such, and then contingency operations type stuff. They were really good about like, hey, if you got nothing fucking to do here, go home. And, leave wasn't an issue. Team leaders and above would stay behind and take care of whatever needed to be taken care of. And then, all the muscle just, hey, fuck off, guys. You got nothing to do here. Get out of here. So we were lucky in that regards, last 10, 12 years that I was there. But yeah, on the flip side, when I was on the white side of STS, yeah, very much so. Show up. Typically, I would try to work out for like 3 hours to kind of like not be involved in shit. But then, yeah, there's a lot of sitting around in the team room. It's kind of like, maybe I should sign on my computer and see what the fuck can do, because there's nothing. If there's no training event, there's nothing to do. It's pretty crazy. I actually got linked up with a lot of airborne guys here when I was on my way out to offer them like free training with stuff, because I knew their gig, like they're just sitting in their fucking dorm not doing shit. It's like, hey man, like I'll teach you guys whatever it is you want, and their leadership wouldn't let them. Maybe it was a legitimate excuse because they don't know who I am or whatever. But I was like, I'm more willing to come in and talk with your leadership, and they wanted nothing to do with it. They wanted their control of their guys doing nothing.
Yeah, it's a good attitude to have at a team, squad, maybe a platoon level, where it's like, no, these are my guys. We're going to do what we're doing. And if you're actually doing shit, the highest I ever made it was a squad leader. And it was always, I started to get in trouble later on in my career where I, kind of stopped really giving a shit and realized that I worked for my soldiers and not, the people that write my NCOER. And it'd be like, fuck, it's 11 o'clock and we have no tasks for the day. Go home. Like, don't be here. There's no point in you being here. You're just going to sit here, twiddle your thumbs, be on your phone. There's no training. We just went out back. We spent 4 fucking hours working on this thing. We're good to go. We just crushed squad. Like, go home. And, when you're able to do that at a team, squad, like I said, maybe a platoon level, like it's good. But once you start getting company wide and you have a first sergeant and a company commander, and it's like, no, we don't want anybody from the outside to come in and do anything with us because we can do it all here. We can do it all in-house. And
then do it.
Yeah,
do
exactly. Then do it. The problem is they don't do it. To kind of stop bitching about, the military a little bit.
No, bitching's good. I did a video about it. Bitching's good.
Yep. So you did all this at a young age. You made these tough decisions. Well, they weren't tough at the time for you.
Toughish.
Yeah, you made these decisions that would impact the rest of your life at a very young age. And then you ended up, being very successful, doing 20 years, getting out. I'm kind of curious, because you've deployed a couple different times, you've done a couple different things throughout your career, a lot of different jobs. When you see what's happening with the withdrawal of Afghanistan, how did that affect you? I know how it affected me, but I'm curious your perspective from somebody who's, done more than double the amount of time I've ever been in, who's deployed way more than I have. What does that feel like for you?
So to be honest, it was very expected. We knew that we were going to leave at some point, and we knew it was not going to be a good leave. We knew it was not going to be a good pullout. Whether the way it really happened, or whether it took a month or whatever, it was just not going to be the right way to do things, I guess, because we were just too dug in there. We held on to that thing way too fucking long. There was just no way to make that breakup happen. Like you have that girlfriend you should have dumped 2 years ago. It's just not going to go well. So I knew that was going to happen. And over the years of being in the service and stuff, I lost a lot of emotions at that point. So it was devastating, and I knew deep down inside, I knew that it was devastating, but I just didn't, like, at that point, I was just so numb to this shit. I was like, I fucking knew it. And there was no outrage. There was no glee that we were leaving. It was just very much right down the middle. Like, yeah, I fucking knew it. There was a caveat to that my actual old team from my last unit were the ones that went there and ran the airfield and coordinate all the evacuations and stuff. So it was very much, kind of at that point was the like, fuck, I missed that, man. And I wish I was there with those guys. Those guys are fucking beyond capable. They don't need me whatsoever, but it was very much a selfish, like, man, I wish I was there with those dudes. But they fucking killed it. They rocked it. Did what they could with what little they had. The fucking stories that come out of that are unbelievable. It just astronomically, an astronomical failure beyond belief. And I know, not to get the political shit in here, but I know that our government's telling us that it was very successful and stuff, and it was not. It was an absolute debacle. And this is coming from very seasoned, very professional individuals who have been in action since the very beginning, so they know what a catastrophe looks like, and they know what a complete fucking success looks like, and they're like, this is beyond anything we've ever fucking seen. A complete fucking disaster. And so, yeah, eventually there was a moment in which I was thoroughly upset at how we did that and how we continue to do that as Americans. Vietnam, abandoning the Kurds for a third fucking time, abandoning Afghanistan. And I know that the rebuttal is like, well, what should we have done? Like, I don't know, man. I'm not trying to find that answer. I'm just saying what we did was fucked. What we did was an absolute fucking shit show.
Well, and to add to that, when I see people considering it a success, like,
yeah,
I mean, it wasn't a success to Tyler Andrews, one of the Marines that's now a double amputee,
right?
That went there and was just trying to do the right thing, trying to do his job, being a Marine. It wasn't a success to, those soldiers that died, and not just in that moment, throughout the 20 years we were there. This isn't a success. This isn't what success looks like.
No.
And I think one of the problems with that is when the Afghanistan papers came out, I mean, I read that and I'm like, okay, so we don't even know what winning looks like. Like there's no plan for what success would even be.
Right.
And then to see we withdraw, to see the shit show that was us withdrawing be touted as like, oh, this is success. We got out of Afghanistan. Like, sure. Like if we're just looking at we left and that's like what success is for you, sure. But what did we leave behind? You know, equipment wise, lives, the countless amounts of trauma that people have experienced over the last 20 years. It's just
the trust of the American people. Like
it's absurd. It is absurd.
Yeah, it's unbelievably crazy. I mean, there were, I'm not going to say who, but there were entities there that were going against orders and using different assets to personally go in and recover individuals to get them out. When the government was telling them, like, close the gates, no more entries.
I heard about some of those. It happened a lot with some Terps. Some got out, some didn't. You hear stories, and it's not like big story like in the news. You hear stories from like the people that you know that like, yeah, you know, so and so didn't make it out, and they don't get talked about. And it's that, you know, it's such a small community already of people that have been there. And that have experienced this loss, and then to see it just come to an absolute chaotic shit show of an end that it's, I don't know how it can be viewed as a success other than it's probably, you know, I'm not smart enough to know the grand scheme and overall what's good and what's bad. I think, you know, not being there is better than being there doing what we were doing, because we were kind of half-assing it for the last 10 years. Like, what do we have? No more than 8,000 troops there at one time. Like, that's not going to accomplish shit.
No.
You know, it was just kind of like go there, maybe do some HVT stuff. You know, even our deployment, the only reason we did anything is because we were attached to ODA. Like nobody, it was mostly tower guard defending these millions and billions of dollars worth of bases and equipment that we just had there. And then all of a sudden, like none of that even matters because we just fucking left it for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I was expecting very much a like Germany, Japan type thing where we leave a presence there permanently, you know, support the government still. That's what I was expecting, but obviously
that's what I thought too. I thought we were going to be there forever. Like how we're still in Italy, how we're still in Germany. Like you said, I thought we were going to be there forever. You make it a duty station, kind of like Kuwait is, and that little hub in Arifjan.
Or like Korea. Yep. You're doing your 1 year, 2 year stint in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even if we take the emotions out of it, you look at it objectively, what was the strategic value? What did we gain strategically by pulling out in such a way? Absolutely none. We didn't gain anything. We gained nothing.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't gain anything leaving, and we didn't gain anything from just sitting there occupying bases. We were just sitting there for the most part. Like I said, the ODAs and the SOF community, and I'm sure agencies were out there doing whatever the fuck they do. But I mean, what was the point? I guess is a question on a lot of people's minds, and I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to be smart enough and be like, this was the main idea and the purpose of us being there for the last 10, blah blah blah, whatever. Because I don't fucking know. I just know from what I see and from what I've experienced that nobody fucking knew what was going on, and to leave like that in that fashion, and to just, you know, and then that drone strike that supposedly killed those people that took out the Marines. And then it comes out later, it was just a fucking convoy of kids and their families. And we didn't actually get those people. It just adds more to what the fuck are we doing? Like, nobody knows what we're doing.
Yeah, that was very much an intelligence mix-up. They had intelligence that there was going to be a car bomber, and this guy's vehicle very much matched the description of it. The house where they eventually do the strike, it was close to a known ISIS affiliate. So that vehicle left and went down south to where he actually worked. And I don't remember what it was. It was some kind of plant or whatever. And they found that suspicious. So they started following the vehicle. And he would bring, gas back home to his house. So he went to another location, put these gas containers in the back of his truck, his car. And they found that suspicious. So, when he finally came home, the kids did what they do every day, and they run out to greet their dad or whatever at the car, and that's when they struck. Now, having been a forward air controller type, conducting a strike like that inside of Kabul, that would have been a no-go for me. They would have never allowed me to do that. So the fact that they got the go-ahead to do that was at a very, very high level. And why that individual is not answering for that, I don't know. I certainly would be in jail right now if I conducted that airstrike and gave the go-ahead to do it. I would be out of a job and in prison. But, not so much this guy, because maybe this guy's important. I'm not important.
Yeah, it is. We talk about, especially as NCOs, like we are, the stewards of the standards. It doesn't matter what rank you are. If somebody, doesn't have their boots bloused, doesn't matter if they're an O fucking whatever. It doesn't matter if they're an E whatever and you're an E whatever. A private should be able to be like, hey, Sergeant Major, like, you're fucked up right now. Obviously more tact, with some tact to it. But that isn't what happens. And it makes you almost question yourself and kind of what you're doing, because you think, I'm upholding the standard with my soldiers. Why isn't that happening above me? And who are these people that aren't being held accountable for their actions when, like you said, if you were to do that, you'd be in fucking prison, as I think you should, because you killed a bunch of fucking, innocent
absolutely.
people. You authorized it, and you didn't, but if you were to, it's a really interesting situation. And I find it funny how that's kind of just being overlooked, because the emotions of that whole event are kind of like beyond us. And now we're focusing on inflation, war in Ukraine, fucking huge emphasis on, like domestic terrorism now. What are your thoughts on soldiers in the military being investigated for their political beliefs and affiliations?
Obviously, I understand the concern, taking the government side of that.
Absolutely. I agree too.
Yeah, it's very, very much a common thing for cartels to infiltrate our military to get their guys training. And then, they do their 4 or 6 years, wherever, come out and come back with that training. And now they have an instructor on the way of our tactics. And the Chinese are a big deal, and they infiltrate our shit all the time. I had a very close friend of mine who is in the digital espionage background. And he talked about when he was going through college and his courses, he's like, 98% of the class is Chinese. They're over here on visas and shit. And they finish their college and they go right back to the homeland. So that concern is out there. Our greatest export in the United States is information. That is what we do a really good job of getting out there. And being a land of the free is a good opportunity for our enemies to take advantage of that. If you're that kid that always hands out your candy at lunchtime, the word's going to get out, and people are going to take advantage of that. So I understand the concern, but at the same time, you cannot let bad people or the enemy define what our freedoms are. They cannot be able to subdue those. It goes completely against everything the Constitution is about. We don't just start limiting our constitutional rights because maybe perhaps someday the enemy will take advantage of that. That's not the definition of a free nation. We can't tolerate that. So it sucks. Like there's ways to prevent those types of things, but it's not the right thing to do if that's what we want to be. If that's what we want to be, a free republic.
I am very much on the side that if you're in the military and if you're in uniform, you shouldn't fucking talk about politics.
Nope.
I agree with that. I think the military should remain as apolitical as you can keep it. The problem that I see is that in the last administration and the transition to the new administration, it very much became a political pawn. And with that, now I'm sure they're still investigating people who they think are committing espionage. And I think, they should. If you're committing espionage, you get fucked. If you're spying for the Chinese government or the Russian government, get fucked. I understand that. Like you were saying, I see why they do it. But when it comes to, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I am, very much professionally apolitical as much as I am outside of work apolitical. I'm indifferent to it. But to see people that have supported a former president being investigated for sharing their thoughts, it's a very conflicting topic that I have internally that I don't really know how to feel about it. Because on one hand, like I said, you shouldn't be fucking talking about politics or maybe even making threats while you're in uniform, right? You shouldn't be doing that. That's not the right thing to do. On the other hand, if you're doing it in your personal life, not the making threats part, talking about politics and expressing your opinions on it, you shouldn't be held to as if you were doing that in uniform. And it can ruin careers. It can, very much radicalize people in a way, which is the opposite of what they want to do. I think that is how you radicalize someone. If you investigate them and you essentially threaten them in their career because of how they feel politically, it almost entrenches them in their beliefs. It's a really weird topic. And I was curious your thoughts because I'm sure you've dealt with some weird fuck-ass soldiers in your career, as every NCO has. But that's a very new approach, I feel, to politics within the military. And I don't remember it being like that when I first enlisted.
No, I mean, it needs to be something that's consistent. If we have never done that before, then why are we doing it now? And the military should never be political whatsoever. I almost never voted when I was in the military. I did one time because I thought it was the right thing to do, and I regretted it completely. And I just, like you said, you need to remain apolitical while you're in, because what if you are a Trump supporter and now Biden's in charge? What are you going to quit? Are you going to say, fuck this guy? Or you can't.
Exactly.
People will rely on you. So I just never voted. I just felt like that was the correct answer, except for that one time. We won't talk about that little guy.
Who'd you vote for?
This was Obama Bush.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I felt like I was part of the hysteria, like Obama was going to fucking kill us all, and then lo and behold, hey, we're still here. Weird, right? Yeah. I was one of those guys. I laugh at people now that are like, Biden's going to send us into the Stone Age. All right. But yes, very much, if you're in the military, you lose a lot of rights, and that's for a reason, because we need you to do your job. It's not Google. It's not McDonald's. Your job is very, very much, a lot of lives rely on you. and we need you to remain professional at all times because you don't know what you're going to be responsible for. If you have a bunch of military folks online talking about how Trump is basically Jesus and such, it just doesn't look well to the rest of the world. And what's really important is that there are other entities out there that are not our friends that are seeing this shit. Very much so. They very much want the United States to fail. They know that they can't overtly achieve that, so they're going to do it from the inside. It's very much the quote is true. Like, the United States will fail from the inside. That's how you do it. And they're going to hook that shit up. There's plenty of evidence out there of Russians and Chinese setting up fake, Instagram profiles and telling this white supremacist group that, hey, we're setting up a convention at this place, and then right across the street, another bot is telling this group, hey, we're setting up a convention right over here for Black Lives Matter, and then all of a sudden they show up at the same time right across the street from each other, and lo and behold, there's a conflict. Like, that's a real thing. They understand that. They know that they can't get to us with conventional types of tactics. They're using those little things to slowly degrade our capabilities. And so troops need to like segregate themselves away from that shit and just focus on what the mission is.
Yeah, and I agree. Being apolitical, I think, is the best thing that you can do. And I'm not just saying that because that's what I do. I was very close to voting in the 2016 election. I didn't. It didn't feel right. Regardless of how I felt, I was like, yeah, I support this one candidate, but am I in a position as United States infantryman to make this decision when there's so many other people that inherently disagree with this individual? Like, am I the person that is going to cast my vote like that? And I'm like, no, I'm not. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to do a job regardless of who's in charge. So I don't want to take sides. To counter that, though, I do think soldiers should be allowed and able to express themselves politically. Like I said, it gets murky. It gets really murky where that line is, especially in today's climate where social media is so rampant. The military itself is becoming political, whether it should or not, it is. It's becoming political for, from the top down, from the bottom up. And it's becoming very, whoever's in office, well, now that is, the good person, the good people. And if you had supported somebody who was in office before this, no, like, you're not a good person. We're going to look into you, into why you think that. People are not allowed to. Once again, I think it's really fucking cringy when people do this, but they'll have like I'm a 3%er like flag in their barracks room or something.
Yeah,
sure, whatever, dude. But they'll get investigated over that for extremism, and maybe they're associated. I don't know all the details behind it, but you see some of these things happening, and on face value, I'm like, should we be dictating how people feel, politically if they're in the military? We should be saying, hey, don't fucking talk or express your politics at work. Don't do it in uniform. But outside of work, that's something that I think is it gets murky, like I said, because I can see an argument for both. I lean on the side of do whatever you want. I'm just going to kind of laugh at you if I think it's fucking stupid. Like, all the people that didn't get the vaccine just because, they were Trump supporters. We had 100 here that held out and are now getting chaptered, but their reason wasn't anything because of the vaccine. It was because they supported Donald Trump. I mean, I'm sure some of them had reasons for the vaccine, but the ones that I spoke with, it was, no, I'm not getting it. Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what did Donald Trump got the vaccine? He said he got the vaccine. Yeah. He was telling people to get it. Like, what does your political affiliation have to do? And, I laugh at stuff like that, but I don't know. It's murky, and it's really, I don't know. Like I said, I'm happy I'm getting out, and I'm happy that my time's almost done here because I don't know what the fuck's going on, and I don't think people know what's going on, and I don't think those that are making decisions know how to approach something like this. So they're kind of irrationally making decisions.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because I think that's what I think the military was a very good experiment when it comes to, you know, how all these different people can cooperate and accomplish something. Because, you know, you get all these different types of personalities and people from different parts of the state, different parts of the country, different parts of the world, all coming together and some way, somehow figuring it out and accomplishing a mission. And you know, I get to say used to be now, used to dish out, you know, didn't have to be soft about it if you were fucking things up or whatever. It was very much a you're fucked up, you need to correct it now, and they had to do it. It wasn't like a hey, let's sit down for a minute and you know, do this, you know, wraparound talk of trying to, you know, how's your family, and then getting to the point finally. It was very much you're fucked up, you need to go correct it right now, and they had to do it. With all that, with all these differences, you would have racists in the military. You would have individuals that, you know, didn't meet the standards of civilization right now, I guess you would say. You would have idiots. You would have geniuses. You would have prior doctors. And you're throwing all these guys in the same fucking mix. And somehow they're able to all fucking work it out. They all work it out and they fucking make this thing happen. How is that possible? How is this dude from, I don't want to offend anybody, this dude from said state who hates black people with this dude from, you know, straight up Chicago in the same unit, and somehow they work it out together and they're able to accomplish all these different things. I think that was like a very, very perfect example of these groups of people coming together and fucking working shit out and doing things that are more important than their little disputes on life. Like that the show was it Jarhead? No, not Jarhead. The TV show Generation Kill. Like
Yeah. Yep.
they did that perfect. Very much in line with the quote with the Marine Raiders that the guy said at the dude's funeral. Apologies, I can't remember the names. He said, you know, never above you, never below you, always beside you. And that's very true. Like if dudes are getting to think that they're like above people, they're gonna push your shit in and say like, nope, you're retarded. You need to get back down. You know, and if guys start to fall within that unit, guys are gonna come out of the woodwork and say, hey man, what do you need? What do you need? They're gonna bring you back up. It's always about being online, and people would watch that show and just think that we're a bunch of fucking animals and savages, and maybe so, but it works, man. You know, instead of bitching about our differences and shit, we just give each other shit. We laugh off the things that can kill us, and we get together and we fucking make whatever it is we need to make happen. Whether it's loading one ISU from another, or, you know, conquering a country, whatever task it is you get these guys, they're gonna make it fucking happen. And you got dudes from, you know, the Congo all the way to Washington, D.C. in the same fucking group of dudes. I thought that was like a perfect experiment. And this is getting to your point where like now we're going to eliminate people on certain things. And now you're going to make the military, you know, this singular group of folks, and it ain't going to fucking work. It's just not going to work out.
Yeah. And, you know, like I said, it wasn't like that when I first enlisted. It was very much like how you described. It was people from all different types of life, and it still is very much all different types of life from all over, from all different types of backgrounds. But you would have those moments where maybe, you know, I'll use an example that I experienced where there was an NCO. I was a private, and he called a black person, hard-ar'd him, and with fucking piss and vinegar in his voice when he said it too. And this dude calmly goes up to him, grabs him by the fucking throat, and pulls a knife on him. And they fucking hash it out right there and then never happened again.
Yep.
I think that person's perspective changed after that. He had a newfound respect. Maybe he gets out and maybe he goes back to being, a racist prick. I don't know. But in that moment, it got sorted right there. There was never a problem at work. Maybe personally they didn't like each other, but they worked together still.
Yep.
They didn't try and sabotage each other. They didn't try and, nobody went to EO, and they could have, and that soldier would have been kicked the fuck out. That NCO would have been gone
For sure.
very easily, and everybody knew it, and he didn't do it. He didn't do that to him. He handled it there. Nobody got hurt. Thought somebody was going to get hurt for a second, but I'm a private. I'm just like, I don't even know what the fuck to do in this situation, but
I guess this is the military.
yeah, like things like that would happen. And don't get me wrong, it was wrong, and that shouldn't be something that happens all the time. But the way to go about preventing it, I think, like you said, we hold each other accountable very well. Like, hey, fuck ass, like, you need to come back down here. You're not up here compared to this person. You are very much here. We are all very much here. And I saw things like that throughout my career. Nothing as intense as that. That was probably the most intense bit. And how in the moment it seems awful. And if you just, you're looking down on it and you just see that moment, you're like, there's a racism problem in the military and we need to fix it.
Yeah, sure.
But it gets sorted at a low level, which I always think is better. The lower the level it gets solved at, the better for everybody. And they work together just fine. We were still combat effective, and it all worked. And now it's very much isolating. And as I said, I think that just further entrenches people in their beliefs, be it right or wrong. And that's the other murky bit of it. What is right and what is wrong at this point when it comes to what a soldier believes? Because it's not as straightforward as, this person thinks that they are better than this person because of the color of their skin. That's a very simple thing to understand, and be like, okay, well, if he truly believes that, and like some people believe that, one race needs to be killed over the other. I don't think it's as extreme as a lot of people think, or as abundant as people think, but it exists. I acknowledge that.
Sure.
Now it's more, this person voted for Donald Trump. This person on Facebook maybe showed support for Donald Trump. So they're an extremist. They're a political extremist. They don't belong in the military. And that's, like I said, where it gets murky between that line of what's right, what's wrong, and how do you handle it? And I don't.
Yeah. So how is an individual supporting Trump political extremism, but crushing the other side and removing them from, the service because they believe in that's not a political extremism. How is that? I mean, that's like turning into the thing that you hate, what
Exactly.
the fuck?
Exactly. And the point that I always try and bring up with people is, if you're on the left right now and you hear that and you're like, fuck yeah, get all those Trump people out of the military. They have no place to be there, blah, 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 whatever. Think about when somebody that you hate is now in control, and that precedence has been set that they can use these powers and they can investigate these people. They can use the FBI, they can use the military, and they can say, we don't like your politics, so your entire career is ruined. You're going to get an other than honorable discharge, and now you can't get a fucking job. Get fucked. Like you are creating these actual extremists and these actual people that radicalize out of the military by doing stuff like that to them. And it's a concerning thing. And as I said, I don't know what the right and appropriate way to go about it is, because there are these problems in the military. Sure. There are some racist people, there are some sexist people, there are some whatever people. It's not as abundant as I think a lot of people make it out to be. And it gets, for the most part, handled at a very low level, and it never really sees the light of day. I think that is the preferred way, but
for sure. Yeah. Lowest level. Because there's, all parties can be separated from it if you can. It gets handled, but higher echelons are not hearing about it. And I know this is very faux pas now. Like I got my blood wings, from a force recon guy, and it sucked. But there's reasons for that. Pain is a very good teacher. A lot of guys that get the tree line, what do they call it? Tree line.
I'll go find my favorite tree.
Well, no, they get they take them out of the tree line, just beat the fuck out of them, basically.
When you got a problem with someone?
Yeah, tree line discipline or someone. Anyway, that's effective, and we really, really don't have the time to get to the reason why you need to do this most of the time when it comes to warfare and this kind of job. Now, would a dude at the Apple store need to get that kind of treatment? No, we got all the time in the world to explain how you fucked up. But when it comes to lives are on the line kind of thing, like, we don't have that kind of time. So that shit is like, we used to do fight nights on Friday when I was in the pipeline. So I was still very much a student, whatever. And we realized what we didn't realize. We had squared away NCOs. Like, one guy was a former recon guy. Another guy was a former SF dude. And it's like, you guys are never going to show your frustrations. You're never going to air your dirty laundry to our instructors. You fucking keep it inside. You don't say anything. On Friday, you guys get to fight it out. So we had, in our building, we had the entire third deck was empty. It was in the process of being, gutted out and shit. So we would all get fucking hammered if you wanted to. It was optional. And we go up there and we put fucking boxing gloves on, and you get to pick the dude, like you, and you fucking went to town, and you went at it until you were done. There was no time limit or whatever. And then after that, it's like, all right, we're good. And I think that's what we lack dramatically within the entire nation, is that we are so adamant about making people understand my point of view. And that's damn near impossible. You guys folks have completely different mindsets, and you're trying, like, the far right is trying to make the far left understand, and same vice versa. It's just not going to happen. But can you dickheads work together for the better good of this fucking country and look at an objective, look at a mission set, look at it, a fucking whatever it is, and accomplish that thing? You guys know you're never going to see eye to eye about Jesus or about abortion or whatever the fuck, but what's the end state? Like, what bill are we trying to pass? Like, who are we trying to negotiate with overseas? Make that shit happen. And, we used to get fired for that stuff. If we as a group couldn't work together to accomplish whatever it is our commander's trying to do, you get fired. You get kicked out of the fucking unit. We have these fuckheads that are in charge for their entire lives, never accomplishing anything, and they're still fucking there. Like, and we're paying them for life. They're paid for the rest of their lives. So they get bonuses for just being nobodies, just showing up every now and then and falling asleep in Congress, or hitting the, like, I'm not voting today button. It's asinine. It's fucking ridiculous. And I think it's time that we hold some folks' feet to the fire and make them do their damn jobs.
Yeah. And as you said, we had, I only experienced this in my first unit. We had MMA gloves. And if you had a problem, it was right then and there. If you're arguing with somebody to the point where it's affecting work, it was like, okay, we're not doing this, whatever training we're doing. If we're just sitting there bullshitting, or if we're doing like a fucking whiteboard class, we're stopping it. You're going to go handle it, and then we'll come back to it. And sometimes people would pussy out of it, and that's fine. Sometimes you wouldn't. Sometimes you'd handle it right there, and then maybe somebody gets a little bloody, a black eye, and then your first sounds like, what the fuck happened? Then you all lie to him, and he knows. And
I got kicked in the pool. That's always our excuse.
Yeah, you go about your day. But that problem is solved then and there. It's quick, it's easy, and it's not this drawn out fucking, hate that can transfer if you ever deploy. If you have this problem with somebody and you never hash it out, it sounds terrible. But if somebody needs your fucking help, and it's like, am I going to run under fire for this guy? I kind of think he's a piece of shit, And the answer always needs to be, yeah, I'm going to go fucking help that person regardless of how I feel.
Yeah, people always stray away from violence. They just think that it's a a very savage way of handling things, but it's actually really, really fucking effective. No, we don't need to, fight the barista at Starbucks, like, oh, you want to fight this? Like, no, we don't need that shit. But yes, like in an organization where, lives are on the line or it's serious enough, hey, let's just fucking handle this, and it's done. And I would say it's probably not the same for everywhere, but 90% of the time, guys are coming out of that like hugging each other and high-fiving, and it's fucking good. It's done.
Yeah, it's certainly one way to go about it. Maybe it's because I'm not really a part of that culture anymore because I'm being retired. I'm getting out. But I've kind of I strayed to the nonviolent approach for a lot of things. It's one thing, when I say I'm pursuing pacifism, I recognize that sometimes in like immediate, self-defense of my life or my family's life, I might have to do something I don't want to do. But for the most part, I've been really emphasizing and trying to educate myself on de-escalation tactics and just being okay with disagreeing with somebody and going about my life. So yeah, I kind of disagree with you there a little bit. I'm curious your thoughts on that. I think I have a bias because I'm detached from it now, but I'm very much taking a nonviolent approach. At least I'm trying to, and applying that as much as I can to the rest of my life.
No, for sure. And I made videos completely about how to do de-escalation type stuff. It was very specific to our unit being at war, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have time to hash this out. This has to be a thing that needs to be taken care of immediately. Do I think that, two workers at Google need to go out and fucking hash this thing out? No, man, because for one, they're not trained. And it could turn really, really bad. And for two, for us, it is a training event. There is always only go 70%, when it comes to physical combat type stuff. And we don't ever really get to go hard because, we have to maintain our deployment capabilities or whatever. So no one ever gets to go 100%. Well, now you get to an extent. There are referees around. No, but with the de-escalation stuff, man, I talk about that shit all the time. It does no good to always try to portray yourself as the superior human being. You don't want to fuck with this, bro. Like, no. Actually, the complete opposite. You want to be very sympathetic to what's going on. You want to remain calm, obviously. Remain that calm overtone. To try to de-escalate the situation. That's very much day-to-day type stuff. What we're talking about is very much, hey man, we're in the middle of the pipeline, we don't want instructors to see our bullshit. Wait until later, because we're all kids, we're all in our 20s, and we'll hash this shit the fuck out. Nobody at Food Lion needs to fucking go out in the back and fucking work this shit out with some MMA gloves.
Yeah, and like I said, I recognize I joined a profession where your job is violence. As an infantryman, you have a bunch of monotonous bullshit, but at the end of the day, larger picture, like that's your job. Your job is violence.
Yep.
You have to be lethal and you have to be capable of great violence. I think my perspective has changed, and that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about too. As I'm transitioning out of the military, and one thing that I saw a lot as an NCO was I would do my best, and in my mind, prepare soldiers to get out that weren't going to stay in, and give them life advice when I had no life advice to give them besides the military, because I've been in since I was fucking 17. So how am I going to help them when they get out? And I wasn't thinking about that at the time. I was doing, the best that I could. And I'm like, yeah, this is what you need to do. This is how you prepare. And then I would see a lot of them end up just coming back in because they weren't prepared. They didn't really, have that identity outside of being a soldier. And that was my wake-up call. And that's when I started to look into things. And as I said, that's where my approach to life has kind of changed. I read about Taoism now. I think it's pretty cool. I like I say, I pursue pacifism. I don't think anybody can fully be a pacifist unless they're fine with laying on the ground and getting killed, which I'm not okay with, but, only in direct threat of life or my family's life. And trying to figure out who I was as a person, I was fortunate enough to start working on that while I was in. So as I'm getting out now, I already have value to people outside in terms of work. I've already, come to terms with, changing how I go about certain things and recognizing that I am going to be a different person. I'm going to treat myself differently. I'm not a soldier anymore. I think a lot of people struggle with that. And after doing 20 years, for you, I imagine 20 years, that is a lifetime for some people. That is, you have to embody what you have done, especially in the military. It's not like any other job where, you go 9 to 5, you go home. Sometimes you're in at 2 a.m. and you don't leave until, 5 days later after going hard. You have to embody it. It has to be who you are, I think, to be successful. How did transitioning out of the military look for you and kind of, entering, that new world after, only knowing the military for 20 years?
Yeah, it's tough because even if you do recognize it in yourself that you're not prioritizing your family, that is what you're doing, and it's not it's not you being a bad husband or a bad father or whatever. It's very much a matter of fact that if I don't prioritize what it is I'm doing in the military, I'm not coming home.
All right, folks, we're back. We had to take a quick little break from yesterday, and we're picking up recording today. So yesterday when we left off, I was asking you kind of about your transition from service, what that looked like for you, and how, the struggles that came with that, because at your level and even, lower than that, it kind of becomes who you are in the military, and that is your job, and that is very much you. So what were some struggles that you kind of experienced, and how did you kind of overcome that stuff?
Sure. Like what we were told was, the optimum time to start your transition is at about 2 years. And that goes with, start looking for other jobs, putting resumes out there, start working on on getting your health records and all that stuff, linking up with your local VFW to start working the VA gig, etc. But I mean, everyone knows that that's just absolutely impossible. There's no military unit out there that's just going to let you kind of fall off for 2 years. So I think actually that 2 years was because of that, because they can't let you go. So they're saying like, hey, in your spare time, start doing these things. Because I think I want to say it was like the 16-month mark is when you start getting serious about it. It's just a long process, requesting medical records, and then you have to wait 2-3 months or whatever to get those records. And if you're at like a joint base, it's difficult because you have to talk to, as an Air Force guy, you got to talk to Army guys, and they think that you're an Army guy until they figure out that you're not. And then, it's just a little more difficult. I think the more challenging thing, though, was that you finally figure out that you got to do this thing. Nobody at the unit is really going to go out of their way to help you, specifically for line units and such. We had a really good backside support element at our unit, so it was fairly easy for me to get access to information. But at the end of the day, it's completely up to you. It's completely up to you how much effort you put in is what you will get out. And that's not talking about hiccups of here and there of like we don't have any of those records or whatever. Whatever may happen, mistakes happen. So, but yeah, the sooner you get after it, the easier the transition is going to be, and the better you feel coming out the back end of it. If you don't put time in it, like you're going to garbage in, garbage out kind of deal. So obviously you need to get after it. But I think the common sense of our realm is that our guys need us, and I'm gonna work to the bitter end because my guys need me. My guys need me. And it's really hard to get over that. It's really hard to understand that, the unit or whatever it is it's the train's it's not stopping. It's going to continue without you, with or without you. And the, two senses, maybe the one being that you don't want to fail your guys by quitting essentially. And the other, maybe more selfish, is thinking that there's no way these guys can survive without me. There's no way this unit can, I have to have some kind of purpose. I have to have some kind of reason, and you're taking away my reason, kind of thing. I think those are probably the most common ones that I've seen. Of course, it's it's pretty scary going back to the real world. Essentially, life is. I hate to say easier because it's your life is threatened a lot of the times, but your food is provided, your clothing essentially is provided. You have a consistent paycheck, you have consistent health care, et cetera, and now you gotta figure out all that shit on your own. And there really isn't a support element, essentially near you that's supporting you. If you want that kind of stuff, you have to go out there and venture for it and look for it. That kind of workload, may terrify some folks. So again, I was super lucky with the support element that I had. So when I started to get serious about it, I was able to really put my head down and get the shit done. So I was super lucky in that sense.
Yeah, like you said, nobody is going to really help you, and nobody from the top down is going to be like, hey, take today to go gather all those medical records and go present them and, start your SFL TAP process, even though in my experience, I think SFL TAP is really fucking useless. I don't know. Did you go, what does the Air Force have?
So I did a really good job. They do an initial assessment. You go find these folks or whatever, and they do an interview with you to see how far along you are with life in general, I guess.
Right.
And then they grade you tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. And tier 3 being you have to do everything. Like you're just a useless jellyfish floating around in life and you need help. Thankfully, I showed up with my resume and 2 job confirmations and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, you're tier 1. You just got to go online and do these 3 courses and you're good.
Oh, okay, so very similar to what I had to do. It was all online. There was like a phone briefing where they were essentially reading off of like a fucking PowerPoint. But even talking to like my counselor, for example, I'm going to take a second and I'm going to shit on how SFL TAP goes because I think it's really, I think it could be so much better than it actually is. But like even talking with my counselor, she was explaining to me like all these things that I needed to do on top of what I've already done. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like what experience do you have like, doing this stuff? Cause I want to pick your brain and get specifics as to what you did. And she's like, oh, I've been a military spouse for about 12 years now. And I'm like, okay. Like what experience do you like? That's fine being military. So like what experience do you have for like applying for jobs? Did you hire people? Did you interview people? No, I've just done this and I've been a military spouse. And I'm like, all right,
Sweet.
Well, that's, yeah, like great for you, but that's not helpful, And yeah, so I think there could be a lot of things that are done to actually benefit soldiers because I was lucky. I started putting in the work beforehand. Like you, I showed up, I had a resume. I had talked with a couple different places that I wanted to work, and we were moving along in that interview process, and they're like, okay, yeah, tier 1, you got to do these classes. I'm like, okay, and it's online, you just click through it, blah blah blah, like any other military class. But
yep.
When I was seeing how some other soldiers who might be that tier 3 or tier 2 who just haven't done anything to prepare themselves, but have this idea of, oh, I'm just going to get out and use my GI Bill and go to college. Like I feel like that's everybody's excuse to that E4 that did 3 years didn't really do too much, just kind of did a couple live fires, and now it's, yeah, I'll get out and I'll go to college. And then they come back in because they have absolutely nothing going for them. And it's more of a check the box at SFL TAP.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of it comes out in personal accountability, though.
Correct, yep.
That's the problem. They don't have that. and they don't have the sense of responsibility to be like, I need to do this for myself. And that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, the military doesn't really like, well, like, except for the Air Force. The Air Force is very different. The conventional Air Force, but by large, the Army, Navy, and Marines, they really don't like guys to think for themselves. They very much want you to take orders, and so when it comes time to think of and care for yourself, you've lost that mentality. You're waiting for platoon leaders or fucking squad leaders, whatever, that tell you, hey, you need to go get your medical records. Like, I'm just gonna sit here and wait until someone tells me to do it, and well, next thing you know, you got a month left, and you don't have shit done.
Yeah, and that's just the problem. The military primes you, especially as a lower enlisted, primes you to not do anything unless you're told to do it. And then you just take that attitude and it's like, yeah, I'm getting out, but I'm just going to sit here and wait until somebody gives me a checklist to go do. And then even then, most of the time they need like an NCO to go with them to make sure that they actually get shit done. I find it crazy that they give you 10 days to like out process. You can do that shit in like a day or two. Like if you just go around and actually do it, well, I'm not complaining. I get 10 days to have an excuse to not be at work, but it's essentially like they give them 10 days, I feel, because you get these folks who have no personal, accountability or have this responsibility or have the willingness to just go and do shit for themselves. And they do one thing and then they go and they sit in their barracks rooms, and then they do one thing the next day and then they go and sit in their barracks rooms. And it is really not setting them up for success like they think they're going to. But with that too, there's a ton of other things that go into just what they give you on that checklist. I'm going through the med board process, and I'm kind of lucky with that because they kind of handhold you through all the medical stuff. But I was talking with some other people who didn't go through the medical process. They don't give a fuck about your medical records unless you go to them and you start hounding people about it.
Yep, that and they don't tell you what to do with them. You get them and you're like, okay, I checked that off the list. I got my medical records, but they don't tell you like, hey, you need to find a local VFW guy or and start working that shit with your VA and all this stuff. And they don't give you very good resources to go to. Thankfully, I've had friends that had gone out before me, and they knew all the guys to go to. So I was lucky in that sense. But yeah, it doesn't say like, hey, get your medical records, and then go find your local whoever to start your VA benefit process and get yourself enrolled in the VA. Sure, you can pick things up, but then what are you supposed to do with these things? And probably just throw it underneath your bed or something. Or it's crazy how important that shit is. Of all, the medical stuff is super important, and they just don't even give it. They just let it go. It's all word of mouth stuff.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm getting my hand held through the med board process, but even with that, there was an old coach who, back when I first started out, we were volunteer coaches on like the CYS program, and that's how we met, and we hated each other, like despised each other. And he found out that I was in the med board process, and he reached out, and he had gone through the process, and he was like, hey, here's all the shit they're going to tell you to do. And then here's a ton of additional stuff to make sure that you actually get taken care of medically as opposed to just paid money. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. That's what I've been emphasizing. I want the problems to be addressed and fixed. That way my back and neck don't fucking hurt if I turn it too far one way or the other. Like the money, sure. Money for the rest of my life is nice. I'm not complaining about that. But I care about addressing and actually fixing the medical problems that I have. And for whatever reason, going through the process is very much, okay, yeah, you'll get paid, that's it. And I'm like, well, I want it to get fixed. So having to go through all these word of mouth people to figure out what I need to do just to be taken care of medically for the problems and injuries that I sustained from being in the military, it's a pain in the ass. And I'm an NCO, so I know that I can go around and, oh, I got this chest candy and I got this stuff. People will, kind of take me a little bit more seriously, but that's not the case for everyone. And a prime example of that, I went to sick call once for my back. I had pissed myself. It was pushing down on a quasi nerve, I think is what it was called, and it affects your bladder. And I pissed myself, and I'm like, well, this is a fucking problem.
Yeah.
And I go in, I just pissed myself. This dude's arm is literally like fucking broken. Like you can see like there's like random shit popping up, and he's just sitting there, and he's like in obvious fucking pain. And you know, he was a private, and they come out. He was even there before me, and the guy was like, "Oh, hey, Sergeant, you can come back in." I'm looking. I'm like, we're in the same fucking unit as this guy. Like he is literally like sitting here with a broken arm. He needs something more than I do. I just pissed myself. And it turns into, you know, shit like that. And even when you're getting out and going through the process, it's the same thing. You know, when you go to sign out somewhere, oh, you're an NCO, it's fine, whatever, sign it off. But that's not the case for everybody else. And it's not even the case for us most of the time. And it's troubling that it is such a pain in the ass just to be taken care of and to actually get the stuff that, you know, you need to be okay and to prime yourself for when you get out. It's like a game. It's like a scavenger hunt for a lot of it.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine being a kid trying to get out, doing your 2 years, 4 years, or whatever, just because that age-old tradition of being an asshole, you know, senior NCO asshole, and the kid saying like, "Hey, man, you know, I have had headaches since for 3 years now since that deployment, blah blah blah. And I can't. I feel like I should be like, shut up." You know, get back in your fucking dorms, do whatever the fuck. Just because that mentality is like, well, I did it and it was hard, so, you know, you could do it. Yeah, I mean, like, I thought your purpose was to make it, you know, the situation better than what you had. So just because it was hard for you, it doesn't mean it was the right way to do shit. So I don't know. It seems like those guys slip through the cracks a lot because they are that kind of person and they follow fucking orders and just get people in line. But yeah, it's at the detriment of those kids. Maybe that guy is getting out because he just can't take anymore. His headaches are horrendous. You know, what's more expensive? Is it if we're looking at this objectively here? What's more expensive? Is it to train a new fucking private from the bottom up, or is it to get this fucking kid better and get him functional and operational and put him back on the line? You know, if we want to look at it a statistical way, you know, look at the fucking numbers. You know, what's more expensive? But we don't see it that way. We've had a hard time with recruitment as well, and we're always looking at the problem of how do we recruit more people? How do we recruit? And it's like, well, I raise my hand. Like, how do we, you know, maintain more the people that we already have? How do we do that? Because, you know, I've had my back fucked up for fucking 6 years now. You know, how are we going to prolong my stay in the military? Because, you know, you've already trained me. You spent millions and millions of fucking dollars on me, but you're willing to just let me get out, worrying about how to get these new kids in and spending millions more on them. It's a very back-asswards way of thinking. And I made that comment fucking 6 years ago, and I haven't seen anything change from it. Like you know, our portion, our elements of the military have gotten way better in that sense when it comes to, you know, going up to NICO and getting head trauma inspected and getting actual physical therapists assigned to the units, actual strength coaches and stuff like that, so that it's not just knuckleheads thinking that they got to run 10 miles every day to get in shape. And there's actual science to it now. And when you're done with that, you can go next door and get your physical therapy done to make sure you're actually doing that and taking care of yourself. So it's getting better for us. But I mean, I can't imagine, you know, conventional Army and Marine Corps or whatever making that a priority. You know, maybe it's just a logistical impossibility to conduct physical therapy on an entire company of dudes. You know, I don't know, but if the numbers don't lie, then maybe we should start looking in the other way.
Well, there was a brigade sensing session on it was for the NCOs and the officers, and I'm sure they did one with the lower enlisted. But the topic for us was, how do we make the Army a more appealing place for new recruits, because the recruiting numbers are fucking dog shit. Like, they're really bad.
Yeah.
They're hurting. And, people have all these, good ideas, blah, 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 whatever. And I just kept thinking about like you said, keeping the people that we have in and keeping them around. The problem that I see amongst many, we can talk purely from a financial aspect. A brand new soldier that enlists for 3 years into infantry was getting offered $50,000 bonuses. I'm an NCO. I re-enlisted for a third time on deployment, and I got nothing. And I was cool with it, like whatever. Like I wasn't expecting a bonus, but it makes me look back and I'm like, why the fuck would I stay when they're offering brand new soldiers that know absolutely nothing?
Yeah.
Right? They might come in and be the next sergeant major of the Army. Like I get it, but why aren't we focusing on just retaining the people we have while also, working on getting in new soldiers? And that'll fix the overall numbers problem as opposed to just a numbers problem of, new recruits and not the numbers problem of soldiers all around. And there is a problem with soldiers all around. And that's why they made this new promotion system in the Army, where if you're in for X amount of time, you're going to get promoted. And they say, like, if you don't get promoted, then you'll get kicked out. And that's not what happens. What ends up happening is, soldier's been in for, I think it's after 3 or 4 years, you have to go to the E5 board. And then you just get non-promo counselings. But if you get 3 non-promo counselings and you go before the board again, they're just going to give it to you. And they need NCOs, and that's why they did it. So it creates this environment where you're getting people that shouldn't be NCOs promoted to NCOs. Like we all know that, shitbag E4 that doesn't even meet the standard, but somehow slips through the cracks the entire way and is just going to stay in the military because it's a job and it's money. And then now that E4, instead of just staying in E4, is going to get promoted to an NCO. And then they're going to be accountable for people and they're going to actually have responsibility. And it promotes mediocrity and it doesn't sustain people who should be, being being retained. It's a really weird approach to a problem that seems like it has a very simple solution.
Yep.
And I don't really understand it too much.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that emphasis, like you guys, you will get promoted. So starting at, for us, E5 all the way up to E7, they're like, you better test, or you better study, you go take your test, and they're like hounding you to get promoted. And then once you get to E7, master sergeant for us, after that they just don't give a shit. After that it becomes a question. It's like, hey, because every squadron will get a one opportunity to give an individual a letter that says they're the man, kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily guarantee them promotion, but it's a lot of points. So they'll go around and ask dudes, and a lot of the guys that have been deploying fucking 16 to 19 deployments and been in for fucking 17 years, they just like, fuck this, I give it to somebody else. And so that keeps happening, goes down the line until you get that one guy that doesn't give a shit about deployments or anything. He just wants to, get a paycheck. He wants to get that E9 retirement pay. And guess what? He's the next chief of the squadron. And he just goes to his office and shuts the door until he has to go work out or whatever. But yeah, that's super, super common even with us. Guys that just, they don't slip through. They just, they're the last dudes holding the hot potato. Everyone else just wants to do their 20 and that's it for me, man. I'm done. Which is what I did. Like I didn't want to do it anymore. So
was it, was it always a goal of doing 20 years? Or were there some times where you were close to being like, nah, fuck this. Like, I don't want to do this, so I'm going to get out.
No. I mean, I had some really, really fucking bad times right around, what was it? It's like right around 2010 to 2012 was the lowest part of my life at the time. But there was never a sense that I was going to get out. It was more like, I just need to get back over there and and everything would be better. And of course it didn't. It just fucking, ever so slightly would get better, and then it'd drop off again and get better, drop off. But there was no sense that it was the military that was doing it to me. I just felt like there was something off or wrong with me. And the military was my lifeline. And then when I had like about 3 years left, maybe 4 years, 3 years, I remember watching a Joe Rogan podcast, and I had this guy, I think their nonprofit was like Fallen Angels or something. He was an SF guy, and he talked about, his struggle, like he was drunk all the time, kind of shit, depression and all that stuff. And I was like, holy fuck, maybe this isn't something I can control. Maybe because I was depressed, my anxiety was through the fucking roof. I could just feel my anxiety build up as I drive to work, kind of shit. And I was like, fuck, man, maybe there is something wrong with me. Maybe it's not my fault, kind of thing. And I started getting really, really focused on learning about that stuff. And that's when you start learning about TBIs and shit.
When you say get back over there, did you mean like get back over deployed?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So I had deployed 4 times by then, 2009. And then I got an Article 15, so I had to leave the unit. And I went and became an instructor. And during that deployment in 2009, I had fucked my back up really bad, to a point where I couldn't sit down. I had to kneel at my desk. I was, sitting sideways in the car to drive home. And being an instructor, I was still doing all the workouts with the fucking kids, and going out in the field and shit. And I was absolutely fucking miserable. Ended up, I had my L3, L4. Is that your back? C3 or C4? So I had a bulging disc back there. And you can actually see my body, like my hips are like this. Now they're completely rotated and turned up. So my hips and my gut, my stomach looks like, a fucking Dr. Seuss thing going on. So I was dealing with that. And then in 2011, I lost a good friend of mine on extortion. And then that same year, the same unit that went in to kill bin Laden, that was the unit that I was working for at the time. So, those two things, getting bin Laden was the crowning moment of, and I've been going deployed so many times now. I was like, this is it. I fucking missed it because I blew it. And, Andy died, doing his fucking thing. And it was just the lowest point in my life at that time, drinking all the time, going into work drunk, just whatever I could do to bring me back down, because I was always amped up, but then I was always depressed as shit. So it was really fucking weird. I had a sense that I never had suicide as in my mind, but I had a sense that my purpose in life was to go over there and to just never come back, just kind of disappear. And I was not getting what I believe my fate was. I was not getting that because I was stuck here doing an instructor thing. And it was unfortunate because I really love teaching, but I fucking blew it because I was just depressed and all this shit, blaming a lot of stuff on myself. Home life sucked. I felt like I squandered the good times of my first 2 kids. I missed a lot of my first child, like a lot of their life. And then I was home for my son was born in 2010, but now I'm in an instructor position and I'm missing out on all this shit. So, I was a complete asshole at home, and yeah, I was just fucking losing it. But again, never thought I should leave. I thought that the military was what was keeping me clinging to life, but it was also my catalyst for what I believe my fate was, which was to go over there and die in combat. But then I got back to the unit. It was like a backdoor kind of deal. Like, hey, you got to leave because of this, but you're going to come back in 2 years. So don't worry about it. So I came back, and then I got right back into it. And, things didn't get better. I was deploying a lot, and I would be overseas so worried about my family for no fucking reason, just be thinking about dumb shit like my son drowning in the lake or something. I'm not there to to be sure he's okay. And then telling my wife that I want to come home so bad. And then I'd get home and I would just be distant from everybody the whole time. And just so concerned about getting ready for the next one. So it was, completely lost. It was very much in purgatory. Like I couldn't be never too happy, always too sad, want to be home, but I want to be deployed. So when I'm home, I hate being home. And then when I'm deployed, I'm worried about my family. Man, it was fucking just super bad. But yeah, then I watched that podcast. I was working out one day and I watched that and like, holy shit, it was comforting to know that it's not my fault, that it's real. And, it's not me just being a poopy pants all day, like that there's an actual physical thing going on with me that wasn't allowing me to be who I was. And, my wife would always tell me, man, why couldn't you be like you were when we met and all this shit? And I was like, yeah, why couldn't I be, man? What the fuck is wrong with me? That's what it was, multiple TBIs and your adrenaline being on high all the fucking time, seeing, unbelievable catastrophes and losing friends, right there in front of you. Like all this shit just comes together, and there was no system to, kind of bring you back to zero when you get home. Even little things like the Brits, when they redeploy, they go to I believe it was like Cyprus, and they're forced to stay there for 2 weeks and do nothing. Like you go to the beach, you eat, you work out, that's it. You don't think about anything. You don't call anybody. You just fucking relax. And it seems really basic, and it probably doesn't help 100%, but it definitely helps. It's something. Whereas us, we do a contingency operation where we'd fly in a said place. We spend about 3 days on the ground. We conduct this hostage rescue, and then we come right back home. And, we were only gone for 5 days. So you just did, one of the U.S.'s largest rescue missions ever. And now you're back home, fucking up the household thing. Like, hey, the dishes don't go here; they go here. I'm like, fuck. But hey, 24 hours ago, we were dropping some bombs on dudes, and I was saving the lives of people. But here, I put the spoons in the wrong spot. So a lot of animosity that was completely unjustified, because how are my kids supposed to fucking know what the fuck I'm doing? They still don't know what I'm doing. I think a good friend of mine told my son the other day, like, man, your dad's a badass operator. My son's like, what? He's a what? He's like, yeah, he's a special operator. Like, and he turns and walks over to me like, Dad, Rob said that you're an elite operator. And I'm like, I mean, I guess, I don't know. He was like totally bewildered by that shit. But yeah, that whole process, I think what trying to get to, like, that shit's real, and no one's really going to help you in that sense except for you. Because even if there's guys that recognize it, and to this day I have friends and I recognize what's going on, you can only tell them so much. In the end, they have to believe it. They have to convince themselves that, hey, I need to go do this thing. And that gets into the medical record stuff, that there probably is something there. When I was doing the research on the TBI thing, you can get a minor TBI from a roller coaster or, a car accident. Maybe it won't do anything then, but if you're a thrill seeker and you go on a fucking million roller coaster rides throughout your life, that's when you turn into grandpa who just likes to sit on the couch and be grumpy all the time. Grandpa probably had a lot of TBIs, and that's why he is, very angry all the time, and so on and so forth. So yeah, even if you had a fall overseas, you get hit in the head, moving ammo around or something, and you see the wizard, or you're unconscious for a moment, like, that shit matters. Maybe not now, but maybe when you get out and 5 years from now, now you have a family, you have a kid, and for some reason you're just, an asshole to your family, and you don't know why, and you want to stop, but you don't know how to stop, and you don't know how to convey that to your family, because it's embarrassing or something. You don't want to admit that there's something wrong with you. But then, it's too late. You never brought it up because, we're all tough. We're all big dick, barrel-chested freedom fighters, and we don't get hurt. We don't have emotions. But it's too late, man. It's fucking lost. Like, I'm sure there's a process to go back in time to start it again for the VA, but I'd have to imagine it's absolutely heinous.
Yeah, there's one thing that I personally struggled with that I found, and I wasn't relieved that other people were going through the same type of struggles that I was, but it made me think, okay, like this is more normal than like something's completely like just wrong with me compared to everybody else. When you deploy and when you're in a combat role and you see all these things, and in the moment, it's like a light switch where you just turn those emotions off because they have to be, you know. So what? Like there's the inside of somebody's head over there. Like you have a job, you have a mission. You can't be distracted like that. Just fucking forget about it. Keep going. But the problem that I had was I turned off. And then when I came home, like you said, there's no real integration process. It's okay. You just deployed maybe 2 weeks ago. You were, you know, conducting whatever type of operation, doing whatever, seeing whatever. And then you go home and 2 weeks later, it's okay. Now I have to like do the dishes. I have to do the laundry. Oh, well, now we do laundry a different way. And now I'm angry about it. And I had a real struggle with turning those emotions back on, which is something that my wife for, you know, a couple of years was like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like right now, you know, before you left, like you were super like, and you know, like women, like emotionally available type deal. And men are like, fuck no, I'm not like that. But, that was a struggle that I had. I couldn't turn back on and I didn't want to admit it for a while. And I started talking to some people. Like we'd be out pulling security like during training. Like we'd be in an ORP, I'd be going around checking on my guys, and you know, I kind of lay down, make sure they're staying awake. I talk with them for a couple minutes, and you know, casually I'd be like, yeah, so like, how are you doing? Like since we got back, like what's going on? And they wouldn't want to say anything, and then I would kind of open up with like my little struggles, and then I found that they were going through similar things, and it's something that I really wish got talked about more because, you know, you have these people that deploy, you have these people that have to shut down to conduct the mission. And then, like you said, it's, well, I'm sucking at home. Like I'm sucking doing what I'm supposed to do at home. I can't, for whatever reason, I just can't fucking remember that the dishes go here or the spoons go there. Where am I good at? And you struggle with that stuff. And then you think about, where did I not have these problems? And it's deployment. When I was deployed, because you were emotionally shut off and you didn't have to worry about the dishes. You didn't have to worry about the spoons. You had other problems to worry about, but you could manage that because you were just shut off to it. It was like, yeah, whatever, you know, that guy that we worked with, you know, for a couple months just got killed, and you know, it happens. And then you kind of go home having never really processed these events. And because you took so long to process them, you never actually do. And then that leads to all these problems. And, you know, I don't know what the right answer is, but the more I've looked into it and the more that I've kind of grown over the years since my last deployment, and I think and reflect on these things, it's a problem that never gets addressed. And you have people that mid-deployment will ETS. Like, oh, you know, time to go. So mid-deployment, they're just plucked, removed, and then all of a sudden they're not even in the Army anymore after a couple weeks. It's go home. And I can't imagine having to go home after, you know, you're 17 years old, you just left for 5 years, and you're in the middle of a deployment where, you know, you're constantly, that adrenaline is peaking, which isn't, like you said, you look into that, having your adrenaline spike that much is really, it has long-term effects on people.
Yeah.
It's not good. And imagine, you know, you're in the middle of that and then you get plucked, you go back, you out process really fucking quick. You don't even have time to process half of this shit. And then all of a sudden you're re-entering a world that you haven't really been in since you were like 17, 18 years old, and you're around your family. Like
there are techniques to help with that, and I think they're well known, but the military doesn't like to hear about it anymore because it's not is not condoned and all that shit, but getting guys around, whatever small element you want to do it in, but getting guys around in a controlled environment and having drinks and just talking about shit. I can't count how many times that has worked with guys. Even when the Marine unit that was in Afghanistan during the evacuation, they had all those dudes just come back and demand their unit to let them have their own party and drink and just be amongst folks. And a lot of their former unit guys who have gotten out came back for that, and they all just had a party there. The conception is that, or inception, or whatever it is that they're just going to start fighting each other and go into blows. And quite honestly, like the complete opposite happened. They all sat around, current active duty guys and former guys from that unit, all talking about shit, and they ended up just talking about like their concerns and their problems that they had when they were in and what to look for, and it fucking worked out. It's not to say that blows won't get thrown, because we've had our share when we've lost guys here. We just take over a bar, and it's typically us just shooting the shit about the dude, and it turns into like a massive group therapy session. But of course, there are those who are super close to the dude and just can't take it. So yeah, there runs a risk, but if you keep it controlled, man, like allow that fucking 19-year-old kid to have a drink if he's under the supervision of his senior NCO or platoon leader or whatever it may be, and let that kid fucking vent, man. If you want that guy if you honestly want your unit cohesion, you want to maintain that experience. You don't want to lose somebody to a bigger event that could be even more traumatic. This kid finally loses his shit and does whatever. Address the problem fucking now, and let the dude be able to open up again. And quite honestly, to get that vulnerable, I hate to promote drinking and stuff like that, but sometimes that's just the case. That's the only way to get a kid who's supposed to be a killer, an emotional robotic killer, to put that guard down again, and allow him to express what it is he's feeling. And absolutely, I have done that many times before, where I had to give my concerns about myself out first, and then then the dominoes start to fall. So
yeah, it's and like you said, the military doesn't want to promote that type of stuff. I think there's a couple reasons behind it. One of it means that they have to admit that there is a problem. And if they admit that there's a problem, then they have to, actively try and solve the problem. And even people not only shut off emotionally and then are, to come home and expect it to just be fine and go about it. In a way, it isn't, it's looked down upon if you go to behavioral health, and they say it's not. They're like, oh, it won't affect your career. And in some cases it won't. But the problem that ends up happening, especially once you get back from a deployment, HIPAA becomes something that is, it's murky.
Yeah.
I saw, and that fucking pissed me off as this guy's team leader at the time. I was a young NCO. I had talked to this guy. That exact situation I described, where we were, pulling security during a training operation. I just went and laid down next to him. We talked, and I was like, you should go. At the time, I was doing what I thought was the right thing. I'm like, you should go talk to behavioral health on post. Like, you have some problems, they can help you out. There's resources available. Let's go use them. And he went, and then all of a sudden, like, there was some weird administrative stuff going on with them. And then I get called into the commander's office, and the commander's like, tell me what's going wrong with, I'm not going to say his name. And I'm like, no, like, I'm not going to violate the integrity and trust that my soldiers have to talk to me about problems. He's going to behavioral health. He's addressing the problems. And then he's like, oh, that's fine. I happen to know his counselor, and just calls a behavioral health clinic and talks to another captain and starts, I'm in the room like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is the exact opposite of what's supposed to happen.
You're about to get me into the military legal system as well, like how fucked up this is. But we'll get off subject, obviously.
we can talk about that all day. But that event right there, I remember, luckily he got out. We were able to square him away. Everything was okay. He ended up getting out. He had done some stuff. He got what was it, Silver Star with Valor or Bronze Star with Valor? It was years ago, but he did some shit. He went into shock right after he did it. It was bad. He ended up getting out. He's being taken care of now. Still talk with him. We're actually planning on a hunting trip soon, so he's all good. But that moment though, of seeing how that goes, I was like, I can't now, as an NCO, having witnessed this myself, I can't ever recommend anybody go to behavioral health here. So what I started to do, I would drive. I was fucking paranoid after that. I was, years ago, I was fucking paranoid about it. I'm like, I don't want to go talk about my problems and then have my fucking commander hear about it and then potentially have that, affect how he views me as an NCO. I would drive 2 hours away once a week to go see a therapist that I paid with cash out of pocket. And I was fucking paranoid about it. And I started to recommend, it was helping me. So I started to recommend, so I'm like, hey, look, Military One Source, it's not the same as behavioral health. It's a little bit more confidential. At least it's supposed to be. Or if you can, I know we don't get paid too much and therapists are expensive. Try and, go talk to somebody outside of the military. And that's what helped me a lot. Communicating with folks who have no connection to the military whatsoever was probably the biggest thing for me. But like I said, the main problem becomes there is a problem for starters and recognizing that. And then secondly, the resources available, while on paper, oh, you go to behavioral health, that will never affect your career. It doesn't matter. Nobody will ever know. It's confidential. You talk. I've seen that isn't always true. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Either way, that's a risk to take. And then 3, if you can't go to behavioral health because you're unsure or you just don't trust it, now you have to pay a lot of money out of your pocket to seek a counselor away from the military. And not everybody has a financial means to do that. And the number one stressor in lower enlisted is finances, because 1, they don't get paid a lot. 2, they make dumb decisions. And 3, they just, they don't get a lot of money to begin with. And it's just a really vicious circle for soldiers when they get back from these deployments, and how to deal with these problems and recognize that it isn't just like, oh, poor me, I'm poopy pants. When you experience TBIs, when you experience those traumas, when you turn yourself off emotionally and don't process a lot of shit that you've seen, done, witnessed, whatever, it will catch up to you. And dealing with that is something I don't think the military, or, I don't want to speak for the whole military, but that the Army at least is not good with identifying and solving.
Yeah, no, and they said that by the Army acknowledging it, then it's seeing it as a weakness, but that goes all the way down to the very lower level leaders as well. You talked about that company commander or whatever, that makes him look weak. It makes him, if one of my soldiers is crying at a therapist, that makes you look bad. And my soldiers are weak or whatever the fuck. And like, man, how the fuck why isn't that guy concerned in the correct ways? I remember when PTSD finally became a thing. And when I finally took my test, you take your behavioral baseline test, I had already been blown up 3 times. And so my baseline, having gone off, whatever, was already affected. So it was a joke, basically. It was a joke that you just sat there and did a fucking test on the computer, and that determines, no TBIs today. But anyway, I remember when PTSD was becoming a thing, and it was very terrifying. I mean, the word was that if you go to the doctor claiming PTSD, like you're out, you'll never be able to own a gun again, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone was like, fuck that. I'm okay. And then later on in life, as friends of mine started to retire and shit, they started speaking up about stuff like, guys, I was responding to a kid on target that had gotten blown up, and I remember carrying her lifeless body in my arms and to get her to the helicopter. And then 10 years later, when my daughter was the same age, I remember her giving me a hug, and then I fucking lost it, like out of nowhere. And we're hearing all these stories like, holy fuck, like everyone is like, yeah, I have done shit like that too. And it's crazy that nobody knew about this shit until it's over. People are getting out, or have 2 years left, a year left, and we're starting to hear these stories of guys like cracking. Finally, the pressure got to them, but they showed up to work every day, and you never knew. It's unbelievably sad that these fucking guys, some of the most elite human beings on the fucking planet, appear that way. They're not. They're finding a dark corner somewhere, and they're drinking themselves to death just to get through the next day. And it's unbelievably fucking sad, dude. Like I can't. It's overwhelming just to think about friends of mine. I see them every day, and they're fucking cracking jokes and shooting the shit, giving guys shit. But then thinking about them going home and like what's going on. They're shutting themselves off. They're yelling at their kids. They're lost. They don't know where to go. They don't know which way is up, and it's fucking. It tears me up fucking just thinking about those guys that they go through that shit. But yeah, man, at least on our end, which, it is the top end of the military, so we get all the money. We have assets, but there's still problems. Yeah, there's still problems. I think it's getting better. I've been out for a minute, so I want to say it was getting better while I was there, but there's still struggles, and it's all with leadership. It is absolutely all. It didn't have to do with us. It didn't have to do with our resources that were available to us. It had to do with our leadership. They were not adamant about guys seeking help and maintaining those individuals like we talked about earlier. The concern is, how to recruit more guys. And I don't know, at least in our situation, a lot of our senior leadership they did not have any combat experience, where that was changing. Like when I left, those officers who had combat experience were in, majors and, light and lieutenant colonel positions. So they're making their way up into those upper areas, and hopefully they get to stick around, because a lot of those good officers got the fuck out. They were able to read the writing on the wall and be like, fuck this. Like, if I don't fall in line with what they want me to do, they're just gonna, send me off to fucking Cannon Air Force Base or some shit. So they're like, fuck this, I'm getting out. Yeah, which is unfortunate, but
yeah. And I think, like you said, the emphasis of a lot of the problems, or the cause of a lot of the problems, is really shitty leadership, be it at the lowest level, that E5 team leader, to the highest level, that sergeant major. There is shitty leadership around. And when that's who you are mentored by as a lower enlisted soldier, that E3, that E4, if that's who you're primed by to be a leader, you're going to emulate that. And not always, but for the most part, because that's how you think you're supposed to be. And as I said, I realized it after I was a fucking tyrant for like the first year or two that I was an NCO. I was an asshole because that's all I knew. I was like, NCOs are assholes. I don't know why, but they are. So I have to be an asshole too. That's how I'm a good NCO. And I was a fucking dick for a couple of years. And then I started to realize that I worked for my soldiers, and I don't work for the people that write my NCOER. I don't give a fuck about the people that write my NCOER, And that was when I started to get in trouble. In some cases I can reflect and be like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done those things. I probably shouldn't have said those things. Like, I fully recognize that. It wasn't always like I was only working for my men and I did the just things all the time. That's not true. But that's when I started, also to realize that, okay, so if I'm getting talked to and if I'm getting rated lower because my job as an NCO is to take care of my guys. And I'm spending more time doing that than I am maybe, coming into the office and helping another squad leader with their counseling packets. Like, what the fuck? What am I doing? I don't care about his counseling packets. That's his fucking problem. That's his job. Little things like that, I started to realize, well, if this is happening at this level, what happens if I stay and I become a platoon sergeant? Does it stop there? And then I started to pay more attention to, what my platoon sergeant's doing. And I'm like, well, fuck, he's doing the same shit. And then I'm like, what about my first sergeant? I can't get a first glimpse onto him, but if it's here at the lowest level, I can only imagine what's going on, the higher you get. And I was just very turned off by it. And I'm like, I don't want to be a part of this type of organization where it's not going to promote what I think is good leadership. And it discourages people from seeking out help for themselves so that they can be that effective soldier and meet the mission requirements, as opposed to just, we'll just replace them. How do we get more people? And turn me off to it a lot. And that's why I keep saying I'm very happy that I'm getting out. And I'm very happy that retirement process is just about finished. But man, it's sad. And like you said, these people are the elite of the elite. Especially at your level, there's, the most elite men that you could be working with, that are your friends. And when you show up to work and everything is fine, because it's work, that's where people are comfortable. That's where they're successful at. That's where they know how to be, how to operate, because they just only did that for however long, your deployment was. And then they have to go home and deal with all these unknowns, and things change. Kids grow up and they have different needs. They have different wants. Maybe they had an interest that you shared before, and then you come home and now they don't give a fuck about that anymore. And it's all just, it stacks on top of each other, and you don't recognize that trauma. And that's when you end up with, like you said, that guy is hugging his daughter and he just breaks because now he's processing what happened years ago. It's incredibly sad. And I do know a couple resources, but I'm curious for you, what kind of, because we're bitching about a problem, what are some solutions that you've seen that have been effective?
So again, very fortunate. I was selected as a candidate to go to NICO, Natural Intrepid Center of Excellence. Their primary focus was TBI, head trauma stuff. But as the years went on and they were successful, they added stuff to their program. So, like, you'll get sleep studies done, you'll get MRIs of your entire body done to look for any kind of trauma. They have specialists around the board that are on your team. So you have like 7 or 8 different doctors that are a part of your team, and you do an initial interview with them, and then throughout the month that you're there, you visit with them here and there. You get counseling done. You can get family counseling done. You do art therapy, music therapy, sensory overload type things done there. You get physical therapies done, all kinds of different physical therapies. And that just, typically to get that kind of information, it takes years. Okay. I get to, get some dry needling done today, and then maybe a couple months later, I can see a counselor. I got to get years of experience all done in a month, and I was able to see, what things work for me and so on. And with that, you're on a team of guys and gals that they're going through the same thing as you, that have head trauma and all that stuff. So I was there with another unit guy, a Navy female intelligence officer, an Army support guy who worked with ODAs and such. And I think that was it for our group. But so we're all experiencing these things at the same time. That's one of the things that helped me for sure, is to kind of do it publicly, so that you can't cheat, essentially. You had to play the bongos, like you can't get out of that shit. Everyone else is doing it. So, you had to do it. You had to do all the artwork stuff, even though however embarrassing it is, because maybe you suck at it, or you have to do it because you're there and people are watching, and there's that competitive nature or whatever. So all the things that sucked, it was okay because much like being in the military, you had bros and sisters left and right that are going through it with you as well. I think I've said it before, the biggest kicker for me was finding out that, it wasn't me. There was something absolutely wrong. And like I said before, that's a very individual thing that they have to figure out for themselves, that they have to decide, I don't give a shit anymore about my stupid ass, ego. I got to find out what the fuck is going on. I got to find out why nothing makes me happy, why I'm not satisfied with anything. I got to find out why I'm on edge all the time. Like I'm in the red all the time about what's going on in my surroundings. That can't be normal. There's a sense that you're just an elite killer because you act like that. You're desensitized to everything and you're always alert. No, that's not fucking normal, dude. It doesn't matter how fucking badass or whatever it is you think you are. It's just not normal. You should be able to transition back and forth. It should be something that you're capable of. And if you're not, then there absolutely is something wrong. But yeah, my kicker was finally, I would say, being mature enough to let go and accept that I'm fucked up, and then to find out that, like, yep, you have these things. And I was like, thank God. And then, starting to figure out that, I wasn't sleeping. I have sleep apnea. That was a big kicker for me. Like, I was basically choking myself out all night. And I was like, wow, I went to bed at 9 and I woke up at 6. It should be good. But, I got to a point where my eyes felt like they were sunk in the back of my head, and I just had consistent headaches on my eyes. And that was because I just wasn't sleeping. So, you imagine a long night of drinking, and then the next day you have, like, your eyes are sunken in and shit. Like, that was me all fucking day. And then treating the anxiety and depression stuff was big. I'm taking some nerve medication for pain. I was in pain all the time, but you just didn't notice it. You're like, yeah, whatever. This is me now. Yep. So the big one is, and it's tough because I have friends that are going through it, and there's just nothing you can do. You can only make suggestions and talk about yourself, but in the end, they have to accept it. They got to make the decision for themselves. So that's not a really good answer as far as, like, how did I get through it? I got over it and decided that I need to fix it. That I am fucking wrong, not to my fault. I was put in this position, and I did the best I could. But it's time to work on yourself. The NICO was meant to bring guys back in. It's a process that re-energizes guys and brings them back to find out what are their issues so that they can continue working. So they're going in the right direction for that. Unfortunately, though, guys aren't getting there soon enough. The other unit guy that was there with me, he has been in for like 15 years, so this was useful for him to get back online. But the problem is sure, he got all those benefits, but you put back right into the fire. So if you don't remove the problem itself and you just add antidotes to it, and then it's never going to go away. You can only take shots to the knee so many times they keep that pain away. But if you're still doing the same dumb shit, that pain ain't going to go away.
Yeah, and like you said, that ego, because we all have it, whether we like to admit it in the moment or not. When you're in that position, and especially as a leader, you almost need to have that ego. That doesn't necessarily mean I am better than everybody else. It just means I am competent in my job. I know what the fuck I'm doing, and I am the best one that can make these decisions for my guys. And it develops into this idea that if I leave, who's going to take care of my people? Because you don't think that there's another person that could come in, fill your role, and do it just as good as you can, especially if you have people below you. At least that's something that I struggled with when they, removed me from a squad leader position, because I physically could not do it anymore. I mean, my back and neck, I have a fractured neck since 2017, and I just wasn't acknowledging it. It's that typical, I'm a soldier, yeah, it hurts, I'm going to keep fucking going, whatever. And now my neck is almost irreparable. Like, they're like, yeah, surgery can go in, but there's only a 33% chance it fixes the problem. I'm like, what's the other 66%? They're like, 33% stays the same, 33% it gets worse. So, you have this internal, ego that keeps you going, and this motivation and this drive of, yeah, I'm in pain, but I have to keep going. And if I take time off to recognize this pain and try and fix it, be it physical or mental, well, then who's going to take care of my people? What happens to my position? And you think you're the only one that can do it, but a very, hard slap in the face that, I came to acknowledge a couple weeks after I got removed from being a squad leader was, the Army's going to keep going no matter what. If I'm there or not, I could have never been there. I could have never, ever enlisted, and the Army would have been fine. The Army would have kept going. They don't need me. And humbling yourself in that way and reflecting on that is also a very difficult thing for a lot of folks. And I think simply taking away that identity, like, I was a squad leader. If you were to ask me, when I was starting to do my job interviews for stuff outside of the military, because I was a fucking workaholic, when they asked me, tell me about yourself, first sentence out of I'm a squad leader. Like, that was me. And when you have something, you have that identity, and then it gets taken away for whatever reason. Maybe you got in trouble. Maybe you're physically hurt. Maybe you're mentally you need time to process some shit. Having that taken away is tough. And, the important thing, I think, is recognizing that no matter how important you think you are, especially in terms of the military, they don't fucking need you. No matter how good you think you are, they don't fucking need you. At the end of the day, you are very expendable.
And then, there's always the struggle, do I prioritize my family or my job? And it always goes to the job, and you make excuses as to why, and some of them are legitimate. If I don't focus on my job, I could die, which would trickle down into the family. But like you said, you're just a fucking number, So do I need to put massive amounts of time, all of my time actually, into this entity that really could give a fuck if I lived or died? Or should I put it in this group of folks that absolutely not just need me, but they want me there. They want me there. And it seems like a really, really, really simple answer, but it really isn't executed very simply. So, yeah. Again, getting into the retirement thing, getting into the medical thing, getting into what's more important, it is very much the individual. The individual's got to make that fucking decision, and it's not that easy. Guys that might be listening to this right now are probably like, yeah, right. That's fucking not an easy decision whatsoever. What are you talking about? And like, I get it, dude. I absolutely get it. But there will be eventually something that, for you, as you said, there's something that finally clicks, and it's just like, yeah, I know what the right answer is.
Well, and I think also while you're in it, it's easy to say, it's an easy answer to be like, I'm going to put this time and energy into my job and not my family. I think it was easier for me to be a soldier. It was easier for me to be an NCO. It was easier for me to be a squad leader than it was to be a good husband and a good father. I think I'm on the right track now. I kind of do a little, because I want to be better, and I always want to be the best husband and father that I can be. So over the years, I'll talk with my wife every so often, be like, how am I doing? Like, am I doing better? And yes, you're doing good here, you're lacking here. and it's a very open, honest communication. But, you know, I truly believe that for me and for a lot of people, it's easier to be what you are at your job, especially if it's in the military, than it is to be a good, father or a good husband. And it takes time. And it's because you have been a soldier for how many years, and you haven't always had to have been a good dad, or a good husband. When I deployed, yeah, I'm still a husband, but for 9-10 months, what do I have to do for my wife? I have to stay alive, and am I doing that for her in the moment, or am I doing that for the people around me in that moment? So it's, that's another transitional problem that I think some people face, that, if I had to give any advice for that, it would just be open, honest communication with whoever you're with. That's what helped me. But, I know a lot of marriages, especially a lot of marriages in general, go to shit. A lot of marriages in the military go to shit too, because there's so many, different contributing factors. You get married way too young to somebody that you don't really know, or, the stressors that, putting the job first in such a time heavy job and emotional investment that is your job. But yeah, it's there's a lot of problems, and there are good solutions out there. There are good people that want to help. I highly recommend to everybody to talk to people outside of the military structure. It's good to relate to people, I think. Like you and I having this conversation, I get your perspective from somebody who operated at, the highest of levels. I get that perspective, and, I take some things and I learn from it, but there is also a lot of value in people outside of, our gigantic circle of veterans and friends that we might have served with, and the resources that those provide. I found those personally to be more effective, but, some people might benefit from talking more with veterans or people like that. So ultimately, admitting that to yourself, that there is a problem, and, really humbling yourself and letting that ego go, I think is the first step to at least fixing those problems that you might be experiencing.
For sure. And I'll add to what you're saying, like get folks on the outside of the military. And I completely boloed this, but NICO was like that. They're not military folks at all. And it quite honestly was the first time that I felt like people cared, like honestly cared about me. You talk to military doctors, and it very much was a game. They all knew that we wanted to deploy and shit. So we're gonna do what it takes to get you operational in whatever means necessary. So they always played that game, and it wasn't to say that they were ignoring you, but I think it was just known. Like, I know you want to deploy without them saying this, and we're going to get you operational. But yeah, dealing with civilian doctors and therapists and all that, they fucking cared about you, and it was crazy. It was like instantly, the intensity inside me just like went down. It was like, they're not trying to get me to deploy. They're not just kind of treating me like cattle and, branding me and moving on to the next one. They're not going to let me leave until they understand what's wrong with me, because they give a shit. Not because it's their job, it's because they really, really want to find out what's wrong, and they want to get you better. So yeah, absolutely recommend actual human beings and not military robots to figure out how you're ticking.
Yeah, and well, just to expand on that a little bit more, when you mention the military doctors, I read a book recently by Pat Watson. It's called "Fuck Bureaucracy." Really bold and in your face what it's about, but it made me reflect on some things, and I'm like, well, yeah, those military doctors want me to be deployable and will apply Band-Aid solutions to problems that require, stitches or something, because if they disqualify you from something, well, now they have to answer to the people that pay them, who are going to be unhappy that X amount of their force is now not deployable. And it incentivizes them to make you as operational as possible, because if they don't, maybe they're viewed as not doing a good job, or, anyways, I don't want to get too deep into that. I could talk about bureaucracy all day.
Yeah, we used to joke about that all the time. We're like, man, if someone actually came in and really did this, we'd probably be like 75% down. Dude's undeployable.
And imagine the battalion commander.
Oh, yeah.
When he gets a report that a company is 75% inoperational. Holy shit. But I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with me. I learned a lot. I hope our audience can kind of, learn a little bit themselves if they're going through some similar problems, or there's just a lot of people that I think will enjoy listening. So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you chatting. Please take the time to talk about yourself, what you're doing, where people can find you after this, how they can support you if you got anything going on like that. Floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to promote anything. I'm just here to, educate folks. I did my time. I'm not seeking any kind of financial benefit whatsoever at this time. We'll see how long IG lets me stick around and then force me to somewhere else. But just come find me on the interwebs, and any questions whatsoever, no matter how minute or extreme they are, send them my way. I've sat on the phone with dudes for 3 or 4 hours that were having issues about shit, or we disagreed with each other, and I ended up calling the dude, and you worked it out. It's just a communication thing. Like, I thoroughly enjoy talking to folks. It's interesting. People are interesting. Come to find out, if you actually talk to them, you don't text them. But yeah, I am eager to learn about humans, and I'm eager to teach humans. So just keep sending it.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. If you had any closing advice for people, we usually do dad advice. So give some advice to the people, and then we'll end this one.
Dad advice.
Dad advice. I'm a new dad, so this is my way of learning from older dads.
Yeah. So dad advice. You got to understand that critters are a lot smarter than They're unbelievably smart, and I think, for the most part, what hinders them from being unbelievably successful is the parents. And that seems like a really maybe kind of unmotivating thing to say or whatever, but allowing them to get in trouble, allowing them to test things, allowing them to do these things that we deem dangerous or inappropriate at the time. This is the time to do it, because you have them in your control. The time for them to figure these things out is not when they go to college. So, I hate to say this just like kind of blankly, but let them get in trouble. Let them figure this shit out now while you have control, and you can explain to them the whys. Because once they're off to college, it's over. And now they have to rely on other 19-year-old kids to tell them whys when you're back here with all the knowledge. So that would be my only recommendation. Let kids be kids, and then let them try it, and then you get to tell them why that sucked.
I like that one. Let kids be kids. Let them get in trouble while they're under your control.
I say control. That's kind of very...
Yeah, well, they live in your house.
There you go. No leashes. Don't use leashes. Jesus.
No prong collars. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Okay, bye. Why can't I stop it? Oh, God.